Hey guys, tonight we are going to drift into a world gently folded in time. A world of quiet streets, softly glowing lanterns, and the slow, measured passing of seasons. We'll wander through forgotten customs, gentle rituals, and the quiet ways people once celebrated the turn of the year. Before we dive in, show some love by hitting like and subscribing. Only if you feel it's worth your time, no pressure. I'm curious, where in the world are you joining me from? And what's the clock saying over there? Drop it in the comments. It's always amazing to see our community spread across the globe. Alright, let's get comfortable. Maybe grab a cozy blanket, dim the lights, and let that soft hum of a fan or the night set the tone. Take a deep breath with me, because tonight, we're about to escape together on a journey you won't forget. Imagine a soft winter evening in a small village centuries ago. The air carries a quiet chill, brushing against the cheeks of those returning from long days of work. Smoke rises gently from chimneys, curling like lazy spirals into the darkening sky. People are moving slowly, purposefully, carrying baskets of apples, nuts, and sweet preserves. These are the gifts and ingredients of celebration, simple yet meaningful for the new year. In medieval Europe, the new year was not always greeted on the 1st of January. In some regions, March would mark the start of the year, and in others, December held the subtle turning of time. Yet no matter the exact day, the approach of a new year was a gentle punctuation in the rhythm of life, a time for reflection and small, tender joy. Families would clean their homes carefully, brushing away the dust and soot accumulated over months. The act of sweeping and washing was almost ceremonial, a quiet acknowledgement of time passing, of preparing space for fresh beginnings. You can imagine children helping in their small ways, carrying tiny bundles of straw or twigs to make the hearth glow brighter. The kitchen would be alive with quiet activity, simmering stews, fresh-baked breads, and pastries shaped like stars or simple circles, their scents curling through the rooms like whispered greetings. Spices, often reserved for such occasions, lent warmth and comfort. Cinnamon, nutmeg, and cloves mingled gently, and every simmering pot seemed to hum with a promise of calm satisfaction. Outside, in some towns, small gatherings might form in the streets. Villagers would exchange modest tokens, a nut here, a small candle there, and offer soft words of hope for health, prosperity, or contentment. These were not grand festivals with fire and clamor, but quiet affirmations of community and shared life. Lanterns would be lit, casting gentle pools of amber light on cobblestones, illuminating faces with a warm glow. The soft flicker of flame, combined with the hush of winter air, made the night feel intimate and almost sacred. In other parts of the world, celebrations took forms both unique and quietly intricate. Ancient Babylonians, centuries before the medieval period, marked the new year with a Kitu, a festival that blended rituals of gratitude, reflection, and preparation. Temples would host ceremonies that, while structured, were performed with gentle rhythm rather than loud pageantry. There were processions, offerings, and prayers, all carried out with soft reverence, the city's inhabitants moving together as though in a slow, careful dance. You could picture priests in flowing robes, their hands raised not in urgency, but in measured gestures of blessing, while crowds watched respectfully, feeling the passage of time in a communal, gentle pulse. Meanwhile, in ancient China, the new year was intertwined with lunar cycles, and families would prepare weeks in advance. Windows would be decorated with soft red paper cuttings, not for loud display but to invite harmony and ward off ill fortune. Kitchens would work quietly day after day, with dumplings meticulously shaped by hand, their edges pressed carefully together. Children might giggle softly as they helped form the last few, flour dusting their small palms like a thin layer of snow. The evening of the new year would unfold slowly. Meals shared, lanterns lifted, wishes whispered, gentle exchanges that wove families and communities together in a tapestry of calm continuity. Even in medieval Japan, the turning of the year had its own soft customs. People might visit temples in the early hours, the cold air crisp against their faces, carrying small tokens of thanks and hope. Bells would toll in a slow, rolling rhythm, a sound that spread through quiet towns and villages like a gentle heartbeat. Tea ceremonies might accompany these visits, The careful pouring of warm liquid into waiting cups, an intimate gesture of mindfulness and reflection. Each sip was meant to be savored, grounding those present in the slow beauty of time passing, the rhythm of life continuing with quiet grace. In parts of Northern Europe, there were customs such as bringing greenery indoors, holly, ivy, or pine, a symbolic gesture of life enduring through winter's hush. These plants were not loud declarations, but gentle reminders of resilience. Candles were lit near windows, their soft glimmer reflecting in frost-laced panes, offering a sense of warmth that extended from the inside of homes into the quiet streets beyond. Families might sit together, quietly telling stories, recounting the year's small triumphs, sharing laughter that softened the edges of evening shadows. One could drift even further back in time, to the Roman Empire, where the celebration of Janus, the god of beginnings and endings, marked the transition between old and new. Citizens would exchange small tokens, coins, often inscribed with wishes for luck and prosperity. While the empire itself could be bustling and loud, in many homes, these exchanges were carried out with gentle smiles and careful hands. Offerings were placed at home altars, and the moment of the new year's arrival might be observed quietly, as families settled into the calm of candlelit rooms, reflecting softly on the cycles of time and life. As we wander through these centuries, it becomes clear that the essence of New Year's celebration, in its gentlest form, is about pause and reflection. It is the quiet tending of home and hearth, the slow acknowledgement of the passage of days, and the soft weaving together of community and family. In Scotland, for instance, Hogmanay had its quiet rituals long before the modern fireworks. Doors might be opened to neighbors bearing gifts of food, or a small sip of whiskey shared by candlelight, a gesture of goodwill that spoke softly across the chill of a winter evening. Even the sounds of these celebrations are gentle. The crackle of a hearth fire, the soft tapping of wooden spoons against pots, the muffled footfalls of someone walking through snow-covered streets, or the low hum of voices reciting blessings and hopes. There is no urgency, no rush, only the slow unfolding of moments strung together like pearls on a quiet thread of time. As we move into the story of New Year's customs in colonial America, we can imagine families gathering in small, simple homes. Wheat and corn might be baked into sweetbreads or shaped into decorative forms. Candles were placed in windows, their flickering glow visible to neighbors across snow-covered paths. Children might be given small trinkets or coins, soft laughter filling the air as they clutched their modest treasures. Communities would meet quietly in meeting halls or church spaces, exchanging reflections on the year behind and hopes for the year ahead, the cadence of conversation slow and comforting. And so, from one country to the next, from ancient cities to rural hamlets, from grand temples to modest hearths, the new year has always been a quiet, reflective passage. It is in the sweeping of floors, the lighting of a candle, the slow preparation of a meal, or the gentle gift offered with soft words. Across time, across continents, there is a shared thread of mindful awareness, a peaceful recognition that life continues, that seasons change, and that with each turn of the year, there is an opportunity for calm, gentle beginnings. The night continues to deepen, and as the glow of candles steadies and the hush of the world settles in, our journey drifts onward, carried by the same slow rhythm that guided people through centuries of turning years. In many medieval towns, the new year arrived not with a single moment, but with a gradual awareness. Bells did not ring sharply at midnight as they do now. Instead, church bells might toll gently at dawn, their sound rolling softly across rooftops and fields, signaling not celebration, but acknowledgement. The year had turned, quietly, as years so often do. People rose from their beds wrapped in woolen blankets, stretching slowly, breathing in the cool air that seeped through stone walls and wooden shutters. The day felt different, though nothing dramatic had changed. The difference lived in feeling rather than spectacle. Breakfast on the first day of the year was often simple but intentional. A bowl of warm porridge, sweetened with honey saved for special occasions. A heel of bread dipped into milk or ale. These meals were not rushed. Eating was an act of grounding, a way to step into the year gently, without haste. Families sat close together, listening to the crackle of the fire, the occasional murmur of wind outside, the soft scrape of wooden spoons against bowls. In some regions of medieval Europe, there was a tradition of first footing, though in its earliest forms it was quiet and understated. The first person to cross the threshold of a home on the new year carried symbolic weight. Often, it was simply a neighbor or family member bringing a small gift: coal for warmth, bread for nourishment, salt for preservation. These offerings were placed carefully on the table or near the hearth, accompanied by a nod, a smile, a whispered wish for peace. The act was less about superstition and more about reassurance, a reminder that survival and comfort came from shared effort. Further south, in the warmer reaches of the Mediterranean, the new year carried the scent of citrus and olive oil rather than smoke and frost. In rural villages, people tended to their groves and fields even on this day, but with a lighter touch. Work was done slowly, deliberately, as though the land itself needed to be greeted with patience. Farmers might pause longer than usual, resting on stone walls, gazing across their fields with quiet hope. The year ahead was uncertain, as it always had been, but the simple act of standing in familiar soil offered comfort. In ancient Greece, long before medieval bells or village hearths, the new year was entwined with cycles of nature and the gods who embodied them. Celebrations varied from city to city, but many were centered on renewal rather than noise. Offerings of fruit, wine, and bread were placed at household shrines. These offerings were modest, carefully arranged, and left in silence. There was no need for spoken words. The presence of the offering itself was enough. Families moved through their homes with care, cleaning altars, refreshing oil lamps, ensuring that the space where life unfolded felt balanced and calm. Children in these households experienced the new year differently than adults. For them, it might mean a small sweet saved from the previous harvest or the chance to stay awake slightly longer than usual. They listened as elders spoke softly about the year past, stories repeated not for excitement, but for continuity. The same tales, told each year, became part of the rhythm of life, comforting in their familiarity. As centuries passed and cultures shifted, the Roman New Year brought with it the figure of Janus, the two-faced god who looked both backward and forward. Yet even within the vast Roman world, most celebrations remained domestic and restrained. In apartments above narrow streets or in villas surrounded by gardens, families gathered near oil lamps and braziers. They exchanged small gifts: figs, dates, honeyed nuts, foods that symbolized sweetness and abundance. The texture of these foods, sticky and rich, contrasted gently with the cool air of winter evenings. Romans believed that the first actions of the year set the tone for what followed. Because of this, they avoided arguments, harsh words, or strenuous labor. Instead, they spoke politely, moved carefully, and focused on calm pursuits. Reading aloud, quiet conversation, and reflection were common. Even in a society known for its public grandeur, the private turning of the year remained an intimate affair. Traveling eastward in our imagination, the Lunar New Year traditions of ancient and medieval Asia unfold like a long, patient breath. Preparation mattered as much as the day itself. Homes were cleaned thoroughly in the days leading up to the new year, not with urgency, but with care. Dust was swept away gently, symbolic not only of cleanliness, but of letting go. Once the new year arrived, sweeping was avoided, so as not to disturb the good fortune settling in. This created a rare stillness inside homes, a pause in the usual routines. Meals during the Lunar New Year were deeply rooted in symbolism, yet the atmosphere remained calm and familial. Long tables were set with dishes prepared over many days: steamed fish, rice cakes, vegetables arranged neatly on ceramic plates. Each dish carried meaning, but there was no need to explain it aloud. Everyone knew. Eating was slow, almost meditative. Chopsticks moved softly, bowls were passed carefully, and conversation flowed in low, gentle tones. In rural villages, lanterns were lit as evening fell, their warm glow reflecting off snow or damp earth. The lanterns did not blaze brightly. They glowed steadily, marking pathways and doorways, turning darkness into something welcoming rather than ominous. Children carried smaller lanterns, walking close to parents or grandparents, their steps unhurried. The night felt long, but not heavy. Meanwhile, in the Islamic world, the new year according to the Hijri calendar was marked with reflection rather than festivity. Scholars, merchants, and families alike took time to consider the passage of months and the lessons they carried. There were no fireworks, no loud gatherings. Instead, there were prayers spoken quietly, notes written in personal journals, and conversations held in courtyards as the evening air cooled. The turning of the year was internal, measured not by outward signs, but by thought and intention. In medieval Persia, Nowruz, the new year tied to the spring equinox, was celebrated with an emphasis on balance and harmony. Tables were arranged with symbolic items, sprouts growing in shallow dishes, bowls of water reflecting candlelight, fruits polished until they shone softly. Each item was placed with care, creating a scene that invited contemplation. Families sat together around these tables, not rushing to eat or speak, but simply being present. As night fell, storytellers might share ancient tales in hushed voices, stories passed down through generations. These stories were not meant to thrill, but to soothe, to remind listeners of continuity and belonging. The cadence of the storyteller's voice mattered more than the content itself, and listeners often drifted in and out of attention, comforted by the sound. Across the oceans, among the civilizations of the Americas, the new year was also a subtle transition. For the Maya, time was cyclical, and the end of one cycle flowed naturally into the beginning of another. Rituals marked these transitions, but they were deeply structured and calm. Priests performed ceremonies with precise movements, their actions slow and deliberate. Observers watched in respectful silence, feeling the weight of time not as pressure, but as presence. In Andean cultures, the new year was often tied to agricultural cycles and the sun. Offerings of maize, potatoes, and woven textiles were given in gratitude. These offerings were laid out carefully, often at sunrise, as the first light touched the mountains. There was a quiet reverence in these moments, a shared stillness as communities welcomed the return of light and warmth. Returning again to Europe, the early modern period brought subtle changes to New Year's celebrations, but the core remained unchanged. In towns and cities, people might attend a short church service, standing shoulder to shoulder in cold stone buildings, breath visible in the air. Hymns were sung slowly, their notes lingering, echoing softly off vaulted ceilings. The sound enveloped those present, creating a sense of shared calm. Afterward, people returned home to modest meals and quiet afternoons. Some wrote letters to distant relatives, reflecting on the year past. Others walked through familiar streets, observing how the light fell differently now that another year had begun. Even as calendars standardized and January 1st became more widely recognized, the emotional experience of the new year remained gentle and introspective. As the centuries unfolded, one constant remained. The new year was a moment to slow down. It was a pause, a breath taken between chapters of life. Whether marked by a candle, a bell, a prayer, or a shared meal, it was always about awareness rather than excitement. And as you listen now, perhaps with your own lights dimmed and your own day coming to a close, you are participating in this long tradition of quiet turning. The world outside may be different, but the rhythm is the same. Time continues its steady flow, and each new year arrives. Not with force, but with a whisper. The hearts have burned low. The lanterns have dimmed. The stories have softened into memory. And somewhere, across centuries and continents, people have always welcomed the new year just like this, slowly, gently, and with a calm heart, ready to rest into whatever comes next. The quiet carries on, unbroken, like a long road stretching gently through the dark. Time does not hurry here. It simply moves, as it always has, with patience and softness. In many households long ago, the days following the new year were as meaningful as the night itself. The first morning of the year often arrived wrapped in pale light, filtered through thin curtains or wooden shutters. People rose slowly, listening to the familiar sounds of the home waking up. A kettle warming near the fire, footsteps on creaking floorboards, the distant call of animals being tended. There was comfort in how ordinary everything felt. The year had turned, yet life continued in its steady way. In medieval villages, people believed the mood of the first days mattered, so they chose calm. Harsh labor was postponed when possible. Instead, There were small, careful tasks: mending a garment, sharpening a tool, stirring a pot that had been simmering since dawn. These gentle acts were thought to set a tone of steadiness and care, a quiet promise to the months ahead. Children were often given special attention during these days. Elders might tell them stories of how New Year's were celebrated when they themselves were young, and how their parents had done the same. These stories rarely changed. The repetition itself was comforting. It reminded everyone that time moved in circles, not sharp lines. That beginnings were also continuations. In colder regions, winter still held firm. Snow lay undisturbed in fields and along paths, absorbing sound and creating a hush that felt almost sacred. On such mornings, people stepped outside wrapped in heavy cloaks, their breath rising slowly into the air. They paused before beginning their day, not out of ritual exactly, but instinct. There was something about the new year that encouraged stillness. In Scandinavia, long before clocks measured minutes precisely, the new year was felt through nature rather than timepieces. The days were slowly lengthening, though the change was barely noticeable. People marked this subtle shift with quiet gratitude. Fires were kept burning steadily. Food was shared carefully, mindful of supplies. Stories of the old year's storms and hardships were told not with fear, but with calm acceptance. Survival itself was something to acknowledge gently. Farther south, in medieval Spain and Italy, New Year's customs blended faith, family, and food. Grapes, figs, and nuts were eaten slowly, one by one, each bite a small wish for prosperity or health. These were not hurried gestures. Each movement was deliberate, almost meditative. Hands reached, paused, tasted. Conversation drifted in and out, never loud, never urgent. Homes during these times were lit mostly by firelight and candles. Shadows moved softly along walls, stretching and shrinking as flames flickered. This shifting light gave everything a dreamlike quality, especially at night. People sat close together, wrapped in shared warmth, their faces calm and relaxed. Even silence felt full, not empty. In monasteries and convents, the new year passed almost unnoticed to an outside observer. The daily rhythm of prayer and work continued uninterrupted. Yet within these quiet walls, the turning of the year held deep meaning. Monks and nuns reflected on time not as something to celebrate loudly, but as a gift to be used wisely. Candles were lit. Psalms were sung in low, steady voices. The sound was gentle, repetitive, soothing, like waves lapping against stone. In the Islamic world, scholars sometimes marked the new year by beginning new manuscripts or continuing old ones. Ink was prepared carefully. Pens were trimmed with precision. The first words written carried intention, but no ceremony. Writing itself was the ritual. The act of forming letters slowly on the page mirrored the slow unfolding of time. In ancient and medieval India, New Year celebrations varied by region, but many shared a focus on balance and renewal. Homes were decorated with simple designs drawn on the ground with rice flour. These patterns were created slowly, often in silence, their symmetry calming to both maker and viewer. Oil lamps were placed nearby, their flames steady, illuminating the designs softly as evening fell. Food was prepared with care and shared among family and neighbors. There was generosity, but not excess. Each dish was meant to nourish rather than impress. Eating together was an act of connection, a way to step into the new year surrounded by familiar faces and steady presence. Across the seas in ancient Japan, the days surrounding the new year were filled with gentle rituals. Bells rang at temples, not sharply, but slowly, each toll spaced with intention. People listened quietly, counting not aloud but internally, letting the sound settle in their bodies. The ringing was meant to clear the mind, to mark release rather than arrival. Homes were decorated with pine and bamboo, symbols of endurance and flexibility. These decorations were placed carefully, admired briefly, and then simply allowed to exist as part of the space. There was no need to draw attention to them. Their meaning was understood. Letters were written during this time, often by hand, expressing gratitude and well wishes. The process of writing was unhurried. Ink dried slowly. Paper was folded carefully. These letters traveled long distances over many days, carrying calm intentions across mountains and water. As centuries moved forward and societies became more complex, the new year still retained its quiet core. Even in growing cities, where noise and crowds were becoming more common, many people chose to mark the year. Turning privately, they stayed indoors, away from the bustle, preferring candlelight to street noise. In early modern Europe, almanacs became popular around the new year. People leafed through their pages slowly, reading predictions of weather and harvests. These books were not read with urgency or fear. Instead, they were companions, offering gentle guidance through the months ahead. Reading them by firelight became a small ritual, one that encouraged patience. Music, when present, was soft. A lute, a flute, a quiet hymn sung at home. The sound filled rooms without overwhelming them. Music was not performance, but atmosphere. It blended into the background, like breathing. As the night deepened on New Year's Day, people often returned to rest earlier than usual. There was a sense that the year should begin gently, without exhaustion. Beds were warmed with stones heated by the fire. Blankets were pulled close. The body was invited to relax. And now, as this long thread of time continues to unwind, it does so with the same softness. The new year, across history, was never just a date. It was a feeling, a pause, a moment of quiet awareness. The past does not rush. It lingers, calm and steady, like a slow-burning candle. And as you listen, perhaps feeling your own breath slow, you are resting in that same timeless space, where years turn gently and rest comes naturally, without effort. The gentle unfolding of time continues, unhurried, like footsteps on a familiar path walked many times before. In many places, the new year was not confined to a single day or night. It stretched softly across weeks, sometimes even months, blending into ordinary life so seamlessly that it was hard to tell where celebration ended and routine resumed. This was especially true in agrarian societies, where the calendar followed the land more closely than any written date. In farming communities, the new year often arrived with careful observation of the fields. Farmers stepped outside. In the early mornings, the earth still cold beneath their boots, and studied the sky. They noted the direction of the wind, the color of dawn, the weight of frost on leaves. These small details mattered. They were read like quiet signs, offering gentle hints about the months to come. There was no rush to interpret them, only a patient attentiveness passed down through generations. Inside the home, the new year lingered in subtle ways. A new candle placed on the mantel, a freshly washed cloth laid over the table. A small bundle of herbs hung near the doorway, their scent faint but comforting. These details were not meant to impress visitors. They were meant to soothe those who lived there, reminders that care had been taken, that intention had been set. In medieval households, the first few evenings of the year were often spent repairing and preparing. Tools were cleaned and oiled. Shoes were patched. Cloaks were brushed and folded neatly. These acts were practical, but they carried a quiet symbolism. Taking care of belongings was a way of taking care of the future. Each small repair felt like a promise of continuity. Elders sometimes used this time to pass on advice, though it was rarely delivered as instruction. Instead, wisdom emerged through casual conversation. A story told while sitting by the fire. A memory shared while stirring a pot. The lessons were gentle, woven into narrative rather than spoken plainly. This made them easier to absorb, especially for the young, who listened with half-lidded eyes, warmed by firelight and familiarity. In towns, craftsmen reopened their workshops slowly after the new year. The sound of hammers and looms returned gradually, never all at once. There was an understanding that the year should begin without strain. Doors were opened to let in light. Workbenches were wiped clean. The first tasks were chosen carefully, often simple ones, easing both body and mind back into motion. In some regions, people believed that laughter in the early days of the year was a good sign, so they shared gentle humor. Nothing sharp or mocking, just small observations, quiet smiles, moments of shared amusement that lightened the atmosphere without breaking its calm. Travelers during this time noticed how peaceful roads could be. Fewer people journeyed immediately after the new year, preferring to stay close to home. Inns were quieter. Fires burned low. Hosts moved with relaxed efficiency, grateful for the lull. Guests spoke softly, their conversations subdued by the sense that the year was still stretching awake. In ancient cultures that measured time by the stars, the new year was often a moment of sky watching. People stepped outside at night, wrapped in heavy garments, and looked up. The stars seemed unchanged, steady and distant, offering reassurance. Constellations returned to familiar positions, marking the passage of cycles far older than any human tradition. This cosmic rhythm added depth to the new year, reminding people that their lives were part of something vast and enduring. In desert regions, where the night sky was especially clear, this practice felt deeply calming. Silence spread across the land, broken only by wind or the soft shifting of sand. The new year here was not something announced. It was something felt, like a change in temperature or light. In many cultures, water played a role in New Year rituals. People washed their hands or faces with care, sometimes adding herbs or flowers to the water. This was not hurried cleansing, but a slow, deliberate act. The sensation of cool water on skin served as a physical reminder of renewal. Afterward, towels were folded carefully, and the day continued at an easy pace. Food remained central in quiet ways. Leftovers from New Year meals were eaten thoughtfully, never wasted. Each bite was appreciated. The act of finishing what had been prepared carried its own message of respect and balance. Nothing extravagant was needed. Enough was enough. In households where literacy was common, some people began the new year by reading familiar texts. Religious scriptures, poetry, or philosophical writings were revisited, not to analyze deeply, but to anchor the mind. Reading aloud was common, the sound of words filling rooms softly. Listeners drifted in and out of attention, soothed by the rhythm. As evening returned on those early New Year days, the world outside often felt quieter than usual. Fewer lights burned in windows. Streets emptied earlier. People retreated indoors, content to rest. Sleep came easily, helped along by full meals, warm fires, and the sense that nothing urgent was required of them. Across centuries and continents, this pattern repeated in countless variations. Different foods, different prayers, different symbols, yet the feeling remained remarkably similar. The new year was a gentle threshold, crossed slowly, without fanfare. And now, as this long, calm story continues to drift forward, it does so with the same patience that shaped those moments long ago. The past stretches out behind us, not as a series of sharp events, but as a soft landscape of ordinary days made meaningful through quiet intention. The year turns. The fire glows. The night deepens. There is nowhere to hurry. There is nothing to prepare for right now. Only the steady, comforting flow of time, carrying everything forward, gently, as it always has. The stillness remains, unbroken, like a calm lake reflecting a pale winter sky. Nothing presses forward. Nothing calls for attention. The story simply goes on, the way time itself does. As the new year settled more firmly into place, people in the past often became aware of it not through celebration, but through subtle shifts in routine. The way light lingered a little longer in the afternoon. The way morning frost softened just slightly. These changes were small, almost unnoticeable, yet they carried reassurance. The year was moving quietly, patiently. In many households, this period was used to take stock, not in a formal or anxious way, but gently. People noticed what remained in storage: sacks of grain, jars of preserved fruit, bundles of dried herbs hanging from beams. They did not count with worry. They simply observed, acknowledging what was available and what would be needed. This awareness brought a sense of calm control, a feeling of being rooted in the present moment. In medieval kitchens, the new year could still be tasted days later. Broths simmered slowly using leftover bones and vegetables. Bread baked earlier was toasted by the fire, its surface crisping gently. These meals were quiet affairs, eaten without ceremony. The satisfaction came not from novelty, but from familiarity. Outside, animals sensed the same slow rhythm. Horses moved calmly in their stalls. Chickens clucked softly as they were fed. Cats lingered near hearths, half asleep, eyes half closed. The world felt settled, as if it, too, understood that the year had just begun and there was no need to rush. In cities, where life was denser and sounds more constant, there was still a noticeable softness in the days after the new year. Markets reopened gradually. Merchants arranged their goods carefully, wiping dust from wooden counters, stacking fabrics neatly. Voices were low. Bargaining, when it happened, was gentle, almost polite. People seemed inclined toward patience. Artisans often chose the new year as a moment to begin new projects, but beginnings were slow. A weaver set up a loom and spent days adjusting tension before weaving the first thread. A carpenter measured wood carefully, tracing lines with charcoal, pausing often. These preparatory steps were as important as the work itself, grounding the craftsman in intention. In places where writing was valued, journals or account books might receive their first entry of the year. The ink flowed deliberately. Dates were written carefully at the top of pages. There was something satisfying about that first line, not because it marked change, but because it continued a long record of days lived. In households guided by spiritual calendars, prayers or meditations marked the new year quietly. People sat or knelt in familiar spaces, their posture relaxed, their breathing slow. Words were spoken softly or silently. The purpose was not to ask for miracles, but for steadiness, for clarity, for the ability to meet the coming months with calm resilience. In some traditions, elders reminded younger members of the family to pay attention during these days. Not in a strict way, but gently. Notice how the house feels. Notice how your body feels. Notice the quiet. These reminders helped anchor the new year not as an abstract concept, but as a lived experience. Even entertainment during this time was subdued. Games played indoors were slow and thoughtful. Storytelling favored long, winding tales with familiar endings. Songs, if sung, were soft and repetitive. The repetition itself was soothing, allowing minds to wander without effort. As night returned again and again, people slept deeply. There was a sense that rest was especially important at the beginning of the year. Beds were prepared with extra care. Fires were banked carefully to last through the night. Sleep came wrapped in warmth and security. Across cultures, across centuries, this pattern of gentleness repeated. The new year was not an explosion of joy or hope. It was a settling, a grounding, a quiet acknowledgement that time had turned and life would continue, one calm day at a time. And now, as this story continues to flow, it does so without urgency. Each moment connects to the next, like beads on a string, smooth and evenly spaced. The past breathes slowly here. The year unfolds without noise. And in this soft, unbroken calm, there is nothing to do but listen, rest, and drift along. With the steady passage of time, the quiet holds, like a long exhale that never quite ends. Time feels wide here, stretched gently, allowing each moment to rest before moving on. As weeks passed after the new year, people in the past often spoke of it less and less, yet its presence lingered in subtle ways. There was a feeling of freshness in familiar spaces, a sense that routines, though unchanged, carried a slightly lighter weight. The year was young, and with that youth came patience. In rural cottages and townhouses alike, windows were opened briefly on calm days, even in winter, to let in fresh air. The cold drifted through rooms for a moment, stirring curtains and lifting the scent of hearth smoke. Then the windows were closed again, the warmth returning slowly. This small act felt symbolic, though no one needed to say so. Old air out, new air in. Nothing forced, nothing dramatic. People noticed how conversations sounded different in these early days. Plans were spoken tentatively, without urgency. When the weather softens, someone might say. Or, later in the year. There was no pressure to define exactly when. The future stretched out comfortably, full of space. In medieval villages, communal life resumed at a gentle pace. Shared ovens were used again, neighbors greeting one another quietly as loaves were slid inside. The smell of baking bread drifted through the air, familiar and grounding. No one hurried. There was time to wait, time to talk softly, time to simply stand and feel the warmth. Children returned to their small duties, carrying water, tending animals, helping with simple tasks. They did so without complaint, their energy steady but calm. The excitement of the new year had passed, leaving behind a sense of security. They knew what to expect. Days would follow days. Meals would follow hunger. Sleep would come when night fell. In cities, scholars and officials resumed their work slowly. Meetings were shorter. Decisions were made with care. There was an understanding, often unspoken, that the year should not be rushed into complexity. Simplicity was valued in these early moments. In places where trade routes crossed and cultures mingled, the new year brought an exchange of quiet greetings. Merchants wished one another safe travels and steady business. These wishes were not elaborate. A nod, a brief phrase, a shared cup of tea. The meaning lived in the gesture more than the words. In households that followed the lunar calendar, the days after the new year were still marked by visits and shared meals. People moved between homes slowly, carrying small gifts wrapped in cloth. Each visit was unhurried. Tea was poured. Snacks were offered. Silence was allowed to settle comfortably between sentences. In ancient and medieval traditions alike, there was an understanding that beginnings did not need to announce themselves. They could unfold quietly, like dawn. The new year was not a command to change, but an invitation to continue with awareness. Even weather seemed to cooperate with this mood. Snow fell softly when it fell at all. Rain was light and steady. Skies were often pale and calm. These conditions encouraged indoor stillness, reflection, and rest. At night, people lay in bed listening to familiar sounds. Wind moving through trees. Distant animals. The gentle crackle of embers. These sounds had been there the year before, and they would be there in the year to come. Their continuity was comforting. Some people used this time to remember those who were no longer present. They did so quietly, perhaps while sitting alone by the fire, perhaps while walking a familiar path. Memories surfaced gently, without sharpness. The new year, after all, was as much about continuity as it was about change. In many cultures, elders reminded others that the year was long. There was no need to fill it all at once. Work would come in its season. Joy would appear in its own time. Rest was just as important as effort. As days turned into weeks, the new year faded into the background of daily life. Yet its calm beginning left a subtle imprint. A slower pace, a deeper breath, a quiet confidence that time would carry everything forward, as it always had. And now, as this long, steady story continues, it does so in that same spirit. There are no sharp edges here, no sudden turns, only the gentle unfolding of moments, one after another. The year is open, the night is calm, and everything is exactly where it needs to be, drifting softly onward, without hurry, without noise, into rest. The calm remains, like a soft blanket drawn a little higher, inviting everything beneath it to rest. There is no rush to arrive anywhere. The story moves as slowly as the seasons themselves. As the new year settled deeper into memory, people long ago often stopped marking it altogether. It simply became part of the fabric of life, woven so smoothly into daily routines that it no longer stood apart. This, too, was part of its quiet power. The new year was not meant to be held tightly. It was meant to be absorbed. In many homes, the objects brought out for the new year remained in place for a while. A candle burned low on the mantle, its wax pooling gently. Greenery dried slowly, releasing faint scents into the air. Decorations faded into the background, becoming ordinary again, which felt comforting rather than disappointing. Nothing needed to last forever to be meaningful. People continued to rise with the light, or before it, depending on the season. Morning routines were familiar and steady. Water was fetched. Fires were coaxed back to life. Hands moved through practiced motions without thought. The new year did not interrupt these rhythms. It simply flowed within them. In medieval households, this time of year often encouraged quiet planning. Not the kind written down or spoken loudly, but the kind carried in the mind. Someone might think about repairing a roof when the weather warmed, or planting a different crop in spring. These thoughts drifted in and out, like clouds passing across the sky. There was no urgency to act on them yet. In craft workshops, apprentices observed their masters closely during these early weeks. Movements were deliberate, unhurried. Tools were handled with care. There was a sense that how one worked at the beginning of the year mattered, not for productivity, but for mindset. Steady hands, calm focus, patience. In homes guided by tradition, elders sometimes repeated small sayings during this time. Phrases about balance, about taking one day at a time. These sayings were not lectures. They were reminders, spoken gently, often while engaged in another task. Their wisdom settled quietly, like dust motes in sunlight. In places where winter still held the land tightly, evenings remained long. Families gathered earlier, drawn inward by darkness and cold. The new year gave these evenings a particular softness. Stories told now were often gentle ones, stories without sharp conflict, stories whose endings were known. Familiarity made them soothing. In warmer regions, where evenings were milder, People might sit outdoors, wrapped in shawls, listening to night sounds. Crickets, distant water, the occasional call of an animal. These sounds marked time more reliably than any calendar. They reminded listeners that the world moved according to its own calm logic. Across cultures, there was often a belief that kindness shown early in the year would echo forward. This belief expressed itself in small ways. Sharing food, offering help without being asked, speaking gently. These actions were not grand gestures. They were quiet habits, repeated day after day. In marketplaces, this kindness appeared as patience. A merchant might wait while a customer counted coins slowly. A buyer might accept a smaller measure without complaint. These exchanges, though simple, shaped the tone of communal life. As the new year grew older, so did the light. Days lengthened by minutes at a time, barely noticeable, yet deeply felt. People sensed this change before they could see it. There was a subtle lifting of mood, a quiet reassurance that warmth and growth would return in their time. Sleep during this season remained deep and steady. Bodies, attuned to darkness and cold, welcomed rest. Dreams came easily. They were often slow and meandering, filled with familiar places and faces. Waking from them felt gentle, unforced. And through all of this, the new year remained present without demanding attention. It was a backdrop rather than a focal point, a quiet beginning that allowed everything else to unfold naturally. Now, as this story continues to flow, it mirrors that same rhythm. Nothing presses forward. Nothing needs to be resolved quickly. The past stretches out calmly, offering not lessons or warnings, but reassurance. The year turns as it always has. Life continues, one soft moment at a time. And here, in this steady, unbroken calm, it is easy to let go, to rest, and to drift gently onward, carried by the same quiet current that has guided countless new years before. The stillness deepens, becoming something almost tangible, like the quiet just before sleep fully takes hold. Nothing changes abruptly. Everything simply softens. As more time passed after the new year, people long ago rarely spoke of beginnings anymore. Instead, they lived them. The year was no longer an idea or a marker, but a sequence of ordinary days unfolding at their own pace. This was how life was meant to be felt, not in sharp moments, but in gentle continuity. In households across centuries, the new year quietly shaped how people carried themselves. There was a slight attentiveness in movements, a care in words chosen. Even disagreements, when they arose, were often tempered in these early weeks, smoothed over more quickly, as though everyone shared an unspoken agreement to begin gently. In medieval villages, winter work continued slowly. Wool was carded and spun by firelight. Hands moved rhythmically, the wheel humming softly, a sound so steady it became part of the silence rather than a break from it. Threads accumulated little by little, not rushed, each one contributing to something that would take shape much later. In kitchens, cooks returned to their usual recipes, but with subtle variations. A new herb tried in a stew, a different grain mixed into bread. These small experiments were quiet expressions of hope, woven into daily nourishment rather than announced aloud. In places where the new year aligned with religious calendars, sermons and teachings during this time were often reflective. Leaders spoke slowly, their voices measured, encouraging listeners to consider patience, humility, and steadiness. Congregations listened in silence, the weight of shared presence more important than the words themselves. Children sensed this calm, even if they could not name it. Their play during these weeks was often quieter. Games unfolded slowly. Toys were shared more easily. When they tired, they rested without protest, curling up near warmth, watching shadows move across walls. In homes where elders lived, their presence felt especially grounding during this season. They moved slowly, deliberately, embodying the very pace the new year seemed to ask for. Younger family members adjusted instinctively, matching their tempo, lowering their voices, pausing more often. In coastal regions, fishermen returned to the water cautiously after the new year. Boats were checked carefully. Nets were mended thoroughly. The sea was approached with respect rather than urgency. Early trips were short, purposeful, and calm, as though easing both people and vessels back into motion. In mountain communities, paths remained quiet. Travel was limited. People stayed close to home, content with what they had. When journeys were necessary, they were undertaken thoughtful. Why? With preparation and patience. Across cultures, one thing remained consistent. The new year was never meant to be conquered. It was meant to be entered. As days lengthened and the memory of celebration faded completely, what remained was a subtle sense of alignment. Life felt balanced, if only briefly. Work, rest, and reflection found an easy rhythm. People trusted this rhythm, knowing it would shift again in time, as all things do. Evenings continued to arrive softly. Lamps were lit earlier or later depending on the season, but always with the same care. Flames flickered. Shadows danced gently. Conversation slowed as night deepened, eventually giving way to comfortable silence. As people prepared for sleep, there was rarely a sense of anticipation or worry about the future. The new year had already been welcomed. There was nothing more to do. Beds received tired bodies without resistance. Sleep came like a familiar friend. And now, as this story continues its slow, unbroken flow, it follows that same ancient pattern. No sharp turns, no sudden awakenings, just a steady easing into rest. The past breathes softly here. The year moves forward without sound. And you, listening now, are carried along in that same gentle motion, free to let your thoughts drift, your breathing slow, and your awareness fade, as the quiet wisdom of countless new years wraps around you, calm and unending. The quiet stretches on, smooth and unbroken, like a long road at night lit only by a steady moon. There is comfort in how little changes, in how gently everything continues. As the year settled further into its course, people in the past rarely thought of it as new anymore. It simply became the year they were living in. Days followed nights. Meals followed hunger. Rest followed work. This was not disappointing. It was reassuring. The extraordinary had never been the goal. The ordinary, lived well and calmly, was enough. In homes of stone, wood, clay, or woven reed, the sounds of daily life returned fully. Doors opened and closed. Water poured into basins. Footsteps crossed familiar floors. These sounds blended into a quiet harmony, one that people barely noticed because it was so familiar. Familiarity, after all, was a form of peace. In medieval towns, the streets gradually filled again, but not all at once. A few more carts appeared each day. More shutters opened. More voices carried softly through the air. Even as life resumed its normal pace, there was a lingering gentleness, as though the year itself was still waking. Markets became places not just of exchange, but of calm observation. People lingered at stalls, touching fabrics, examining produce, speaking slowly. There was time to notice colors, textures, and smells. Time to appreciate the weight of an apple in the hand, the warmth of bread wrapped in cloth. In workshops, the first larger projects of the year began, but they unfolded gradually. A boat frame slowly took shape. A tapestry grew inch by inch. A manuscript filled page by page. No one expected completion quickly. Patience was not forced, it was assumed. In many cultures, this period carried a quiet respect for balance. Too much effort too soon was believed to unsettle the year. So people rested when they felt tired. They paused when unsure. Listening to the body and the day was considered wise, not lazy. At home, evenings remained unhurried. Families gathered, sometimes speaking, sometimes not. Silence was comfortable. It did not need to be filled. A fire burned low. A lamp flickered. The world outside grew dark, then darker still. Stories, when told, were often slow and winding. They did not build toward excitement. They wandered gently, describing journeys, seasons, and familiar places. Listeners drifted in and out of attention, held by the rhythm of the voice rather than the content. In some households, people reflected quietly on the year ahead, not with lists or resolutions, but with feelings. A hope for steadier work, a wish for health, a desire for peace within the family. These thoughts were not spoken aloud often. They were held gently, without pressure. Across continents and centuries, this approach to the new year repeated itself. Whether people lived in great cities or small villages, whether their lives were simple or complex, the turning of the year asked the same thing of them. Slow down. Pay attention. Begin gently. As the days continued to pass, the new year became less visible, but more deeply felt. It lived in the way people moved through their lives with slightly softer edges. It lived in the patience shown to others, It lived in the care given to ordinary moments. And now, as this long narration continues to flow without interruption, it mirrors that same ancient wisdom. There is no need to arrive at an ending quickly. There is no need to resolve anything. The story is simply here, moving at the pace of breath. The past does not demand to be remembered sharply. It invites you to rest within it. The year continues its quiet journey. And as everything settles into this calm, steady rhythm, it becomes easier and easier to let go, to sink deeper into stillness, and to drift gently onward, carried by the same peaceful passage of time that has cradled countless lives, year after quiet year. The calm remains, wide and patient, like a long evening that never asks anything of you. The flow does not break. It simply carries on. As the year continued to unfold in the lives of people long ago, the memory of its beginning faded into something soft and indistinct. No sharp line separated the new year from the days that followed. Instead, it dissolved gently, like mist lifting from a field at dawn. What mattered was not the moment of transition, but the steady continuation that followed it. In many places, the first month of the year was known for its quiet character. Fewer celebrations, fewer demands. Life moved inward. People listened more than they spoke. They observed more than they acted. This inwardness was not loneliness, but attentiveness. In medieval homes, the sounds of winter persisted. Wind against walls, rain tapping softly on thatch, the occasional creak of timber settling in the cold. These sounds were not interruptions. They were companions. They reminded people that the world outside was still there, moving slowly alongside them. Inside, hands stayed busy with simple, repetitive work. Spinning, mending, carving. These tasks required just enough attention to occupy the mind without exhausting it. They created a gentle focus, a rhythm that matched breathing. Time passed almost unnoticed while hands moved. In places where the new year was marked by written records, scribes sometimes began new ledgers or calendars. They ruled lines carefully, wrote headings neatly, and then paused. There was no need to fill the pages quickly. Blank space was not wasted space. It represented possibility, openness, time yet to come. In households where stories mattered deeply, elders continued to tell them throughout these weeks. Stories of previous years, of seasons that were particularly harsh or especially kind, of people who had come and gone. These stories were not dramatic retellings. They were quiet remembrances, spoken without embellishment, valued for their truth rather than their excitement. Children often listened while half asleep, curled near warmth, absorbing these voices more than the words themselves. The sound of a familiar voice was grounding. It made the passage of time feel safe. In monasteries, farms, and villages alike, bells continued to mark hours, but people paid less attention to them during this season. Time was felt rather than counted. Meals happened when hunger came. Sleep followed fatigue. The body set the schedule. In warmer regions, where winter was mild, evenings were spent outdoors when possible. People sat beneath the sky, wrapped in layers, watching clouds drift slowly across the moon. These moments were quiet and unremarkable, yet deeply satisfying. There was no need for entertainment. Being present was enough. Across cultures, the idea of renewal remained gentle. Renewal did not mean becoming someone else. It meant continuing as oneself, with care. The new year offered permission to move slowly, to forgive small mistakes, to begin again without announcing it. As days passed, people resumed their longer-term rhythms. Fields would be prepared in time. Journeys would be taken when necessary. Decisions would be made when they needed to be. There was trust in this unfolding. Trust that life knew how to move forward on its own. Evenings continued to close softly around each day. Fires dimmed. Lamps were extinguished one by one. The world narrowed to the quiet of a room, the steady presence of familiar walls, the slow rise and fall of breath. And now, as this narration continues, it follows that same ancient current. Nothing pulls at your attention. Nothing needs to be remembered sharply. The story does not build toward a peak. It simply exists, like time itself. The new year, in all its past forms, was never loud for very long. It lived in calm mornings, in patient hands, in quiet nights. And here, within this steady flow, you are free to rest, to drift, to let thoughts soften and dissolve. As the long, gentle passage of time continues onward, smooth and uninterrupted, carrying everything with it into stillness. The quiet endures, soft and unbroken, like the steady glow of embers long after the fire has been tended. Nothing stirs suddenly. Everything moves as it always has, slowly, patiently. As the weeks of the year slipped by in earlier centuries, people rarely spoke of time as something to be managed. Time was something lived within. It surrounded them, filled their days, and asked only to be noticed gently. The new year had opened a door, but no one stood in the doorway for long. They stepped through and continued on, unhurried. In homes across regions and eras, the memory of New Year customs lingered faintly in small habits. A certain dish prepared again weeks later because it had brought comfort. A candle placed in the same corner out of quiet preference. A phrase spoken more often because it had felt grounding at the year's start. These traces remained without effort. In medieval farmhouses, mornings still began with the same rituals. Animals were fed, water was drawn, the fire was coaxed awake. Yet there was a softness to these actions early in the year, as though people allowed themselves a moment longer to pause between tasks. A glance out the window, a breath of cool air, a hand resting on a familiar surface. In towns, people began to recognize one another again in the flow of daily life. The baker nodded to regular customers. The weaver greeted familiar faces. These exchanges were quiet affirmations of continuity. Life was still here. Community still held. In households where multiple generations lived together, the new year had subtly adjusted the pace of interaction. People listened a little more closely. They interrupted less. The beginning of the year had reminded them, gently, of time's passage and the value of presence. In cultures where the new year arrived with the moon, its influence lingered until the next full cycle. People noticed how the moon waxed and waned, marking time without urgency. Nights were shaped by its light, sometimes bright, sometimes faint, always reliable. In places where snow covered the ground, footsteps carved familiar paths through it. These paths were walked daily, deepening slowly, becoming easier to follow. The new year was like that path, at first fresh and noticeable, then simply part of the landscape. In warmer climates, the earth itself began to respond to the year's quiet progression. Buds formed unnoticed. Soil softened. People sensed these changes instinctively, even before they were visible. The new year lived in these subtle shifts, not in dates or declarations. Even in times when the world beyond the village felt uncertain, the new year remained a calm anchor. It reminded people that whatever changed, some rhythms endured. Day followed night. Breath followed breath. One year followed another. As evenings continued to fall, the rituals of rest remained unchanged. Lamps were lit. Meals were shared. Conversations faded naturally into silence. Sleep arrived when it was ready, not forced, welcomed gently. And now, as this long, steady narration continues, it mirrors that same ancient ease. There is no moment you need to remember, no detail you must hold on to. The story is not asking for attention. It is offering rest. The new year, across history, was not a shout into the darkness. It was a soft step forward, a quiet settling, a gentle continuation. And here, within this calm flow of time and memory, it becomes easy to let go completely, to allow the mind to drift, the body to soften, and the night to carry you onward, peacefully, steadily, into rest. The night deepens, carrying with it a quiet hush that seems to stretch across centuries. Time feels slower here, as if it itself has decided to pause, giving every movement, every breath, its full measure. The past continues to flow gently, like a river meandering through familiar valleys, carrying lives, stories, and customs along without urgency. In the homes of earlier centuries, the rhythm of days after the new year settled into a gentle routine. People moved with deliberate calm, attending to tasks that were ordinary yet quietly meaningful. Firewood was stacked with care. Clothes were mended slowly, stitch by stitch. Food was prepared thoughtfully, with attention to detail rather than haste. These small acts were the heartbeat of life, unnoticed by outsiders, but deeply reassuring to those within. In villages, the sounds of daily life were soft and comforting. The clatter of a pot being placed near the hearth, the muffled footfalls of someone crossing a wooden floor, the distant bleat of sheep or lowing of cows, steady and unhurried. All of these combined into a subtle symphony of existence, reminding people that life persisted gently and predictably. Elders often shared their wisdom in quiet ways during these weeks, not through speeches, but through example. The patient way they stirred a pot, the careful handling of tools, the measured pace of walking through the snow or mud. Young ones absorbed these lessons naturally, matching their own movements to the unspoken rhythm around them. In cities, the marketplace resumed its gentle activity. Vendors arranged their goods carefully, dusting surfaces and stacking items with attention. Customers browsed slowly, examining produce, fabrics, or pottery. Exchanges were polite and patient. The New Year's earlier excitement had faded, leaving only a calm acknowledgement that life went on and the world remained steady. In coastal towns, the sea offered its own quiet rhythm. Fishermen launched their boats slowly, checking nets and lines with care. The waves lapped against the shore in repetitive, soothing patterns. Even as work resumed, the pace was deliberate, allowing the water's own timing to guide human activity. In agricultural communities, the new year had already marked a subtle shift in attention. Fields were observed with care, plans made for planting when the season turned, but actions were measured. Tools were maintained, soil was tended lightly, and seeds were prepared with mindfulness. There was no rush. The earth, like time itself, was patient. Even within households, the New Year's influence lingered softly. Candles burned for longer periods. Fresh herbs were placed in small bundles to scent rooms. Simple decorations remained, faded but comforting reminders of gentle beginnings. Families often shared meals in quiet, enjoying the warmth of companionship more than the food itself. In religious communities, prayers and meditations continued to be observed with care. Monks, nuns, and scholars practiced routines slowly, deliberately. Their voices rose and fell gently in unison, blending with the natural quiet. Rituals were precise but calm, offering focus without urgency. Observers or participants felt anchored by this steady pace. Across continents, in lands distant from each other, similar rhythms existed. In Asia, households marked early days of the lunar year with care, but without urgency. In Europe, families continued long-established habits, subtly adjusted by the new year. In the Americas, agricultural and spiritual cycles guided quiet observances. Each place had its own textures and sounds, but all shared a common gentleness. As the evening deepened and candles flickered, people prepared for rest. Warmth was drawn from fires, blankets, or woven mats. Breathing slowed naturally, without effort. The quiet, present all around, encouraged minds to soften and wander gently, to drift toward dreams unhurried. And now, as this long, calm narration continues, it carries that same timeless ease. There is no need to reach a conclusion, no need to hurry to the next moment. The story, like time itself, is a slow current that wraps around you, steady and patient. The new year, in all its past forms, was never a demand or a race. It was a whisper, a soft step forward, a gentle unfolding. And here, in this quiet, uninterrupted flow, it is easy to let go, to sink into stillness, and to drift with the unbroken rhythm of centuries, carried calmly towards sleep. The night stretches on, soft and uninterrupted, like a quiet expanse of snow or a still lake reflecting a pale moon. Time moves steadily, but without pressure, and the gentle passage of days in the past continues to unfold in your mind as you listen. After the initial days of the new year, life returned fully to its ordinary rhythms, yet the softness of the season lingered. In homes across regions and centuries, people continued small acts of care almost automatically. Pots were stirred with patience, fabrics were folded gently, fires were coaxed to steady warmth. Each gesture, no matter how simple, was a reminder of continuity, a quiet affirmation that life went on. In villages, the pace remained unhurried. Farmers walked through fields, noting frost patterns or the first hints of green, but they moved slowly, as though they wanted the land itself to awaken at its own tempo. Their footsteps pressed lightly into soil or snow, leaving impressions that would fade gradually, just as the memory of the New Year's Eve festivities slowly softened into routine. In medieval towns, Craftsmen returned to their workshops with measured movements. The hammer fell gently against wood. The loom's shuttle glided with even rhythm. Each day, work resumed as a quiet practice, a meditation of hands and mind. Apprentices learned not just craft, but patience, absorbing the calmness that the new year's subtle influence had imparted. Inside homes, the soundscape was full of gentle life. A kettle hissed quietly over coals. A child stirred a bowl slowly, measuring ingredients with deliberate care. The hum of a spinning wheel or the soft scratching of a pen on parchment added rhythm to the air. Each sound blended into the background, forming a continuous, calming presence rather than a demand for attention. Even in cities bustling with trade, the early weeks of the new year maintained a sense of moderation. Markets were open, but transactions were steady rather than rushed. Merchants spoke politely. Buyers considered each item with patience. No one needed to hurry. The New Year's quiet reminder that life flows in its own time seemed to linger in the tone of voices and gestures. In homes observing religious or cultural rituals, soft practices continued. Candles burned steadily, lamps flickered gently, and quiet prayers or meditations were observed without urgency. In some places, sacred texts were read slowly, each line absorbed, not rushed. The repetition, the careful attention, and the steady cadence all added to the sense of gentle continuity. Children, even after the initial excitement of New Year's celebrations had faded, carried forward lessons in quiet attentiveness. Games became slower, more thoughtful. Play involved observing textures, feeling movements, noticing light and shadow. The world, calm and undisturbed, invited them to explore without pressure. As the days lengthened, the subtle shift of seasons became apparent, but even this transition was gradual. Light lingered a little longer in the evenings, shadows moved more slowly, and air felt different, softening the edges of each day. People noticed these changes in simple ways, stepping outside a moment longer, touching buds forming on trees, feeling the cool air soften against their skin. Evenings remained serene. Families gathered around fires, sharing small portions of food, speaking softly, and listening to the quiet of the night. Conversations were slow, stories unhurried, and laughter gentle, never loud. Sleep arrived naturally, guided by the comforting rhythm of routine and the calm presence of those around them. Across continents, from Europe to Asia, from the Middle East to the Americas, these patterns repeated. Though details varied, different foods, rituals, and rhythms, the underlying experience remained the same. A gentle, careful passage of time, a slow acknowledgement of beginnings, a quiet awareness that life moves forward steadily, one small, peaceful step at a time. And now, as this narration flows on, it mirrors that same timeless, unbroken calm. There is no urgency, no need for conclusion, no rush to reach any destination. The story, like the passing of years themselves, unfolds gradually, patiently, and without fanfare. The new year, remembered softly through centuries, was never abrupt. It was always gentle. It was always patient. It was always steady. And here, enveloped in this long, calm current of time and memory, you can rest fully, breathe deeply, and drift gently onward, carried by the same slow, unwavering rhythm that has guided countless lives, day by day, year by year. The night deepens further, folding softly around every thought and breath, stretching time into something calm and unhurried. There is no need to chase endings, no need to hurry. The story continues as gently as a river gliding through fields at dawn. In the weeks following the new year, households across centuries continued their quiet routines, carrying forward the sense of calm the turning of the year had inspired. Fires were maintained carefully, their warm glow filling rooms with steady light. Bowls were stirred, water drawn and poured, and hands moved slowly, deliberately, through familiar tasks. Even small gestures, a plate set, a candle trimmed, a chair adjusted, held significance, sustaining the gentle rhythm of daily life. In the countryside, farmers walked through fields with soft steps, noting the earth's texture and the patterns of frost. Animals moved alongside them, calm and steady, sharing in the rhythm of these quiet days. There was no rush. Tasks unfolded in their own time, tending to the soil, repairing tools, checking fences. Each movement echoed a simple truth. Life continues patiently, and so too should those who live it. In towns and villages, artisans returned to their work slowly. The sound of a hammer, the hum of a spinning wheel, the soft scratching of a quill, all became part of a subtle symphony of daily life. Apprentices observed, absorbing not only the craft, but also the calm attention of those around them. The new year, now fully embedded into the background, had left its gentle imprint, a reminder to act thoughtfully, to breathe through each motion. In the kitchens of homes, the aromas of daily meals blended with memories of earlier celebrations. Bread, slowly baked over coals, stews simmering gently in earthen pots, herbs dried and scattered for flavor and fragrance. These meals were neither grand nor rushed, yet they carried a sense of care that was felt by everyone present. Eating became a quiet ritual, an acknowledgement of nourishment and togetherness, as ordinary and steady as the passing days themselves. Even in bustling cities, where the noise of commerce could be constant, the early weeks of the year were tempered with a softer pace. Merchants handled coins with care, measured out goods slowly, and greeted familiar faces with gentle nods. Streets were busy, yet beneath the activity there was a sense of unhurried continuity. The year had begun, and life simply moved onward. In homes guided by faith or tradition, quiet rituals continued. Lamps were lit slowly, prayers or chants spoken softly, and sacred texts read with deliberate care. There was no hurry in these practices. Each word, each motion, carried meaning through its calm presence rather than urgency. Observers absorbed this steadiness, feeling the continuity of centuries in the rhythms of daily life. Children continued to play and learn within this soft rhythm. Games were thoughtful, involving observation and attention rather than speed. They noticed the textures of objects, the movement of light across rooms, the soft patterns of shadow and warmth. In doing so, they absorbed lessons about patience, presence, and the gentle unfolding of time. Even nature itself participated in this calm progression. Days lengthened imperceptibly, buds formed quietly on trees, and the air shifted subtly with the coming seasons. Whether snow lay thick on the ground or spring winds whispered through open windows, the world moved slowly and predictably. People observed these changes without hurry, feeling the reassuring certainty of time passing gently. Evenings drew in softly. Families gathered by fires or lamps, sharing warmth, comfort, and conversation that rose and fell like a gentle tide. Silence was welcomed, not feared. The stillness was part of the ritual, a quiet companion to the slow cadence of human activity. Sleep arrived naturally, unforced, encouraged by warmth, routine, and the steady reassurance of familiarity. Across continents and eras, the essence of these early days of the new year remained remarkably consistent. In each culture, in each home, the world slowed. The turning of the year was acknowledged not with noise or haste, but with calm attention, deliberate care, and a quiet awareness that life, like time itself, moves steadily forward. And so, as this story continues, it carries that same calm rhythm. No sharp moments interrupt the flow. No endings press to arrive. Only the soft, enduring passage of life unfolds, like a river that never stops, yet never hurries. The new year, remembered through centuries, was always patient, always gentle, always steady. And here, within this unbroken stream of quiet moments and careful observation, you can breathe, release tension, and drift further into rest, carried gently onward by the soft, enduring rhythm of time itself. The night stretches further, deep and quiet, holding everything within its soft, endless fold. The world outside is still, yet full of subtle motion, shadows moving gently across walls, embers flickering, breath rising and falling, as it has for countless generations. The passage of time feels patient here, steady, comforting. In the weeks that follow the new year, life continues with a quiet grace. In village cottages, people tend to the land, the animals, and the household with slow, deliberate attention. Each morning begins with familiar motions, water drawn from wells, fires coaxed to warmth, utensils prepared for simple meals. Every action is small, unhurried, but carries The weight of care and presence. The world moves at its own pace, and humans move with it. In towns, artisans resume work at their benches and looms. The clatter of tools, the hum of weaving, the scratch of a quill, all blend into a soothing rhythm, neither rushed nor loud. Apprentices observe patiently, absorbing not just craft, but the steady, calm focus of those around them. There is a quiet lesson in repetition, in the attention to detail, in allowing work to unfold naturally. Inside homes, kitchens are warm with slow-cooked meals. Bread bakes gently in stone ovens, stews simmer in clay pots, and herbs scent the air softly. Eating becomes a quiet, mindful practice. Conversation is measured and gentle, rising and falling in a cadence that mirrors the steady rhythm of daily life. Even laughter is soft, unobtrusive, a quiet music that lingers in the air. Outside, nature continues its subtle work. Trees and plants respond slowly to the turning of the year. Buds swell imperceptibly. Frost thaws in increments. Animals move at their own pace. Even the wind carries a soft, measured presence, rustling leaves or snow with care rather than force. The world itself seems to echo the gentle philosophy of the season. There is no need to rush. Everything unfolds in its own time. In households guided by spiritual or cultural practices, quiet rituals persist. Candles are trimmed carefully. Lamps burn steadily. Prayers or chants are spoken softly, their repetitions meditative and soothing. Sacred texts are read slowly, each word absorbed rather than rushed. These practices are reminders that beginnings are not marked by fanfare, but by patience, reflection, and deliberate care. Children continue to learn the rhythms of life in these days. Games are slower, more contemplative. Play involves observing textures, listening to sounds, noticing light and shadow. Through these soft interactions, young minds absorb the subtle lessons of presence and attentiveness. Evenings are drawn out with calm and quiet. Families gather near fires or lamps, the warm glow wrapping around them. Conversations fade into comfortable silence. Stories are told in measured, gentle tones, drifting through space without urgency. Sleep comes naturally, encouraged by warmth, routine, and the slow, reliable pulse of everyday life. Across regions and centuries, these patterns repeat. The new year is acknowledged, but softly. Celebrations fade into routine. Work, rest, and reflection continue in harmony. Life moves steadily forward, each day unfolding with gentle inevitability. And now, as this story flows on, it mirrors that same soft, unbroken rhythm. There is no need to hurry, no pressure to reach a conclusion. Time itself slows here, carrying you gently along with it. The new year, through all ages, has never demanded abrupt attention. It whispers. It nudges. It continues steadily, patiently, endlessly. And here, in the comfort of this calm, uninterrupted passage, you are free to release thought, relax completely, and drift deeper into rest, carried onward by the soft, enduring rhythm of life itself. The night stretches on, vast and unbroken, carrying the soft hush of centuries within it. Every breath, every sound, every shadow seems to move in gentle synchrony with the rhythm of life itself. Time here is patient, steady, and unhurried, allowing each moment to linger just long enough to be felt fully. As the weeks of the year settle in, the early echoes of New Year celebrations fade completely, leaving behind the subtle imprint of gentle beginnings. In homes across centuries, daily routines continue with careful attention. Fires are rekindled at dawn, casting a soft glow that warms both hearth and heart. Bowls are stirred slowly, bread is kneaded deliberately, and hands move through familiar tasks with the calm precision born of experience. Every small act carries significance, a quiet acknowledgement that life persists, steady and reliable. In villages, the rhythm of labor continues, but it is imbued with a new softness. Farmers walk through fields with careful observation, noting frost patterns, soil moisture, and the subtle signs of early growth. Animals respond to the same pace, moving calmly, comfortably, in harmony with their caretakers. Tasks are not rushed. Fences are repaired slowly, tools tended with care, and seeds prepared methodically. Each motion is part of the larger, patient rhythm of existence. In towns, artisans resume their craft with the same gentle persistence. The tapping of hammers, the hum of looms, and the soft scratching of quills blend into a soothing, continuous backdrop. Apprentices watch intently, learning not only the work itself but also the patience, focus, and steady attention that guide it. The new year's early calm lingers in their movements, shaping how work is approached, thoughtfully, deliberately, and without hurry. In kitchens, aromas of warm bread, simmering stews, and herbs carried from windowsills mingle in a quiet symphony. Meals are prepared with care, eaten with gratitude, and shared in serene conversation. Families speak in soft tones, laughter gentle and unobtrusive, and the warmth of company is valued over any sense of urgency. Even the smallest gestures, the careful folding of cloth, the steady pouring of tea, carry meaning in these early months. Outside, nature continues its gradual work. Trees, buds, and early shoots respond imperceptibly to the changing days. Frost thaws gradually, wind moves lightly through the branches, and animals tread softly on softened ground. The world itself seems to mirror the unhurried pace of human life. Nothing is forced, everything flows naturally. In spiritual or cultural practices, calm routines persist. Candles are lit with care, lamps burn steadily, and prayers or meditative chants are offered slowly, allowing their resonance to fill space without interruption. Sacred texts are read deliberately, each word considered and absorbed. The new year here is less a moment to mark and more a reminder to inhabit time gently, with patience and awareness. Children continue to explore and play in these quiet weeks. Their movements are softer, more attentive. Games unfold slowly, involving observation and presence rather than haste. They notice the textures of objects, the movement of light across walls, the soft rustle of fabric or leaves. Through play, they absorb the subtle lessons of patience, mindfulness, and the gentle unfolding of life. Evenings remain calm, stretching into long periods of quiet reflection. Families gather near fires or lamps, listening to the soft murmur of conversation or the gentle hush of night. Silence is embraced, neither empty nor threatening, but comforting and grounding. Sleep comes easily, guided by warmth, steady rhythms, and the quiet assurance of familiarity. Across continents, from snowy villages to temperate coasts, from mountains to river valleys, this same gentle pattern repeats. The new year, acknowledged softly, fades into ongoing life. Work, rest, and reflection continue in balance. Days unfold naturally, each moment connected to the last, forming a tapestry of calm continuity that spans cultures, climates, and centuries. And now, as this story continues to flow without pause, it follows the same unbroken rhythm. There is no need for dramatic peaks, sudden changes, or sharp endings. There is only the steady, patient passage of time, carrying you gently along with it. The new year, remembered through generations, has never demanded abrupt action. It whispers, it flows, it persists quietly, steadily, endlessly. And here, wrapped in this continuous current of calm and continuity, you can release thought, relax fully, and drift even deeper into rest, carried on the slow, unwavering rhythm of life itself. The night stretches on, endless and serene, carrying the quiet hum of life that has persisted through centuries. Every small sound, the soft crackle of a dying ember, the faint rustle of leaves outside, the gentle rising and falling of breath, forms part of a rhythm that is steady, unhurried, and deeply comforting. As the weeks of the new year unfold, daily life in centuries past continues in gentle repetition. In homes, hands move slowly through familiar tasks. Bowls are washed, fires are stoked, and clothes are mended with care. Every motion is deliberate, measured, and calming, reinforcing the subtle lesson that life's rhythm does not need to be forced. It unfolds naturally, with patience and attention. In the quiet streets of villages, people move gently through their routines. Farmers tend animals with soft, steady gestures. Tools are repaired, fences inspected, and seeds prepared for future planting. Even the smallest movements carry weight, not through urgency, but through care. The rhythm of labor is interwoven with the rhythm of life itself. In towns, the hum of daily activity is steady and soothing. Artisans continue their work at looms, in workshops, and at benches, the repetitive motion of hands producing steady, tangible results. Apprentices observe, learning both skill and the deeper practice of patience, absorbing the gentle pace that the new year has encouraged. In kitchens, scents of slow-cooked meals fill the air. Bread rises gently in warm ovens, stews bubble quietly, and herbs scent the rooms with subtle fragrance. Meals are eaten slowly, with a quiet appreciation of nourishment and presence. Conversation is soft, measured, and unhurried, with laughter that floats lightly through the space rather than demanding attention. Outside, nature mirrors this calm. Days lengthen imperceptibly, buds begin to swell, and animals move with the same gentle rhythm as humans. The wind passes softly through trees, water flows quietly in streams, and the earth itself seems to breathe slowly, reminding people that all life moves steadily forward. In spiritual and cultural practice, quiet observances continue. Candles are lit with careful attention, lamps burn steadily, and prayers or chants are offered slowly, allowing the words and sounds to settle gently in the space. Sacred texts are read with deliberation, each phrase absorbed rather than rushed. The new year is less a marked event and more a backdrop of mindful awareness, a reminder to inhabit time with calm and presence. Children, too, adjust to this slower pace. Games unfold at a gentler speed, filled with observation and curiosity rather than haste. They notice textures, shadows, and the subtleties of light and sound, absorbing lessons in patience, mindfulness, and the quiet flow of time. Evenings are long, soft, and still. Families gather by fires or lamps, sharing warmth, conversation, or comfortable silence. The world outside is hushed. Sleep arrives naturally, guided by the gentle cadence of daily life and the reassuring constancy of familiar sounds. Across continents, climates, and centuries, these patterns repeat. Villages, towns, and cities, from mountains to plains, experience the new year not as a loud or forceful beginning, but as a soft, continuous unfolding. The rhythm of life continues steadily, quietly, and predictably. And now, as this story drifts forward, it follows the same calm, unbroken flow. There is no need to hurry, no need to mark an ending. Only the quiet, steady movement of life itself, carrying everything forward, gently, endlessly. The new year, remembered softly through generations, has never demanded sudden attention. It moves like a whisper. It flows like a river. It continues, quietly, patiently, unceasingly. And here, within this gentle, continuous rhythm, you can let your thoughts soften, your body relax fully, and drift ever deeper into rest, carried forward by the steady, unbroken passage of time. The night stretches wider, wrapping around every thought and sensation like a soft, familiar blanket. The world is hushed, yet alive in subtle ways. The distant sigh of wind through trees, the gentle stir of embers in a dying fire, the quiet movements of those settling into sleep. In this serene space, the passage of time is slow, measured, and entirely gentle. As the weeks of the new year continue to unfold in earlier centuries, daily life flows quietly on. In homes, hands move carefully through familiar tasks. Water is drawn and poured with deliberate care. Fires are tended patiently. Cloth is mended stitch by stitch. Even small actions carry significance, reminding those within that life moves steadily, reliably, without need for hurry. In villages, the rhythm of labor remains calm. Farmers walk among their fields with soft, attentive steps, checking frost, soil, and early growth. Animals move at the same unhurried pace, steady and content. Tools are repaired slowly, fences are inspected carefully, and seeds are prepared for planting when the season comes. The world feels spacious here, each movement echoing the gentle pulse of life itself. In towns, artisans resume work with the same quiet focus. The tapping of hammers, the soft glide of a shuttle across a loom, the scratch of quills on parchment, these sounds blend into a steady, soothing rhythm. Apprentices learn not only craft, but the art of patience, the rhythm of deliberate motion, and the value of slow, careful attention. In kitchens, meals unfold gently. Bread rises quietly in warm ovens. Stews simmer in clay pots, filling rooms with comforting aromas. Herbs are sprinkled with care. Conversation is soft, measured, and gentle. Laughter, when it appears, is quiet and fleeting, as though it belongs to the calm of the evening rather than demanding it. Eating becomes a mindful, restorative act, a subtle celebration of continuity rather than spectacle. Nature, too, moves with deliberate ease. Days lengthen imperceptibly. Trees and plants shift subtly toward growth. Animals tread softly, and the wind carries itself in gentle currents, brushing leaves and stirring the earth lightly. Time itself seems to slow, as if inviting all living things to move in harmony with its steady cadence. In homes observing spiritual or cultural practices, routines remain slow and deliberate. Candles are trimmed and lit with care. Lamps burn steadily. Prayers or chants are offered softly, with no rush, allowing their resonance to fill the space with calm. Sacred texts are read slowly, absorbed, and pondered. The new year is not an event to be marked loudly. It is a backdrop of continuity, a reminder that life flows gently onward when approached with presence and awareness. Children carry forward the season's quiet rhythm. Their games are slow, deliberate, and filled with observation. They notice textures, sounds, and the subtle play of light and shadow, learning patience, attentiveness, and the gentle unfolding of days. Even their laughter seems measured, soft, and soothing, harmonizing with the calm that surrounds them. Evenings lengthen with a gentle inevitability. Families gather by fires or lamps, basking in the warmth of quiet companionship. Conversations drift in soft waves, stories are told in calm, measured tones, and silence is embraced rather than feared. Sleep comes naturally, encouraged by the rhythm of routine, the reassurance of familiar spaces, and the gentle cadence of life unfolding. Across continents, across cultures, across centuries, this rhythm repeats. The new year, once celebrated, fades into the background, leaving a subtle imprint of patience and quiet. Life continues, soft and steady, day by day, moment by moment. And now, as this story continues to drift forward, it carries the same unbroken, gentle flow. There is no urgency here, no need to conclude, only the soft, unending movement of time, steady and reliable, carrying everything forward. The new year, remembered through ages past, has always been patient, always gentle, always steady. And here, in this calm, continuous current of existence, you can release thought, sink deeper into rest, and drift ever further into sleep, carried along by the steady, soothing rhythm of life itself. The night deepens even more, folding around every sound and sensation, as if the world itself is breathing slowly, in rhythm with you. There is no need to hurry, no need to anticipate what comes next. Everything exists in this gentle, steady unfolding, like a river meandering quietly through familiar valleys. In the weeks that follow the new year, life in centuries past continues with its quiet grace. In homes, daily routines move slowly and carefully. Fires are stoked with gentle patience, casting a warm glow over the rooms. Pots are stirred, water poured, and fabrics mended, each motion deliberate, each task performed with quiet attention. Life is steady and reliable, and people move within it without pressure, guided by the simple rhythms of day and night. In villages, the pace of work reflects the season's calm. Farmers walk through frost-kissed fields, observing soil, plants, and animals with measured attention. Tasks are approached slowly. Fences repaired, tools cared for, seeds readied for the next planting. Animals mirror this steadiness, moving calmly alongside their caretakers. Every step, every gesture, is part of a gentle, unbroken rhythm. In towns, artisans return to their benches and workshops with the same deliberate care. The tapping of hammers, the steady glide of looms, the scratch of quills on parchment, all blend into a soothing cadence. Apprentices absorb not only skills but the deeper practice of patience, learning to work in harmony with time itself. Each day is a meditation in motion, a quiet rehearsal of steadiness. In kitchens, The air is filled with gentle aromas, bread rising slowly and warm. Ovens, stews simmering quietly, herbs scattered to scent the rooms. Meals are prepared and eaten with care, conversation soft and unhurried. Laughter drifts lightly, unobtrusive, harmonizing with the quiet rhythm of daily life. Every small act, setting the table, pouring a drink, stirring a pot, carries its own calm, its own sense of continuity. Outside, nature participates in the same steady rhythm. Days lengthen imperceptibly. Snow melts gradually, revealing earth softening beneath. Buds form on trees and plants, promising growth yet to come. Animals move in measured steps. Even the wind passes lightly, brushing leaves and carrying the subtle sounds of the world with patience. Time itself feels deliberate, as though it wishes to be observed slowly, not rushed. In homes observing spiritual or cultural practices, routines are gentle and steady. Candles burn softly, lamps glow with consistent light, and prayers or chants rise in calm, measured tones. Sacred texts are read slowly, each word absorbed, each line allowed to settle in the mind. The new year is not marked by loud ceremony here. It is woven quietly into the daily fabric, a gentle invitation to inhabit time with awareness and patience. Children, too, adjust to this slower pace. Games unfold gradually, filled with observation and curiosity. They notice textures, light, sound, and movement, absorbing lessons in patience and mindfulness. Their laughter is soft, blending seamlessly with the calm that envelopes the household. Evenings stretch into long, unhurried periods. Families gather near fires or lamps, sharing warmth and quiet companionship. Conversations ebb and flow like gentle waves. Stories unfold slowly, and silence is welcomed rather than feared. Sleep comes naturally, guided by warmth, routine, and the steady pulse of life. Across continents, across centuries, this pattern repeats. Villages, towns, and cities, mountains and plains, all experience the new year not as a sudden beginning, but as a soft, continuous unfolding. Days pass steadily, work continues, rest follows, and life flows without abrupt interruption. And now, as this narration drifts forward, it carries that same unbroken calm. There are no peaks, no sharp turns, no urgent calls to attention. Only the gentle, patient movement of time, steady and enduring, carrying all things forward. The new year, remembered through generations, has always been patient, always gentle, always steady. And here, embraced by this continuous current of calm and quiet, you can surrender thought, relax completely, and drift further into rest, floating effortlessly on the soft, unending rhythm of life itself. The night stretches on, quiet and expansive, like a soft ocean of stillness surrounding everything. Every sound, the low crackle of embers, the faint rustle of leaves, the gentle rise and fall of breath, blends seamlessly into the rhythm of the evening. Here, time moves slowly, measured, and without pressure, inviting each thought and movement to soften. In the weeks following the new year, life in centuries past continues at its gentle pace. In homes, hands move deliberately through daily tasks. Fires are nurtured to steady warmth. Bowls are stirred with care, water is poured gently, and cloth is mended stitch by stitch. Each small act carries significance, quietly reinforcing the rhythm of life and the comforting constancy of familiar routines. In villages, the cadence of labor is steady and unhurried. Farmers walk softly through frost-tinged fields, noting the state of soil, plants, and animals. Fences are repaired slowly, tools tended with care, and seeds prepared thoughtfully for planting when the season arrives. Animals move alongside their caretakers with calm reliability. Every gesture, every step, flows naturally into the next, forming a pattern of gentle, uninterrupted movement. In towns, artisans continue their work at benches, looms, and workshops. The tapping of hammers, the soft glide of shuttle across threads, and the scratch of quills on parchment create a quiet symphony. Apprentices watch intently, learning both the skill of craft and the art of patience, understanding that the value lies not in speed or completion, but in steady, careful engagement. In kitchens, Warmth and gentle aromas fill the air. Bread rises slowly in clay ovens. Stews simmer quietly, releasing subtle fragrances of herbs and spices. Meals are shared with care, conversation soft and unhurried. Laughter drifts lightly, never forced, blending naturally with the calm that pervades the home. Even the smallest gestures, pouring a drink, folding cloth, tending a fire, become part of the slow, soothing rhythm of life. Outside, the world mirrors this gentle pace. Days lengthen imperceptibly. Snow melts slowly, revealing earth softening beneath. Buds form quietly on trees and plants. Animals move in careful, measured steps, and the wind passes softly, brushing leaves and carrying the delicate sounds of nature. Time itself seems to have slowed, as though asking for observation and mindfulness rather than rush. In homes observing spiritual or cultural practices, routines continue in quiet steadiness. Candles are trimmed and lit with care, lamps glow consistently, and prayers or chants rise softly, their resonance settling gently in the air. Sacred texts are read slowly, words absorbed and allowed to linger. The new year, here, is not celebrated with grandeur, but woven subtly into everyday life. A gentle reminder to approach time with awareness and calm. Children adapt naturally to this slower rhythm. Games unfold gradually, filled with observation and gentle curiosity. They notice textures, light, shadow, and sound, learning patience, attentiveness, and the beauty of quiet progression. Their laughter is soft, harmonizing effortlessly with the steady pace surrounding them. Evenings stretch long and serene. Families gather near fires or lamps, sharing warmth, quiet conversation, and deep comfortable silence. Stories unfold in measured tones, and the hush of night is embraced, soothing and grounding. Sleep arrives naturally, encouraged by warmth, routine, and the slow, reassuring pulse of life. Across cultures, lands, and centuries, this pattern repeats. Villages, towns, and cities, mountains, rivers, and plains all experience the new year as a gentle, unhurried unfolding. Work continues steadily, rest follows naturally, and life moves forward without abrupt interruption. And now, as this narration drifts onward, it carries the same unbroken calm. There is no need for urgency, no sharp moments, no endings pressing to arrive. Only the slow, patient current of life, steady and enduring, carrying all forward. The new year, remembered softly across generations, has always been patient, always gentle, always steady. And here, within this continuous current of calm, you can let thought dissolve, body soften, and mind drift, floating deeper into rest, carried effortlessly by the enduring, soothing rhythm of life itself. The night deepens further, embracing everything in a quiet, steady fold. The world outside remains still, yet alive in the subtlest of ways. The faint rustle of leaves, the distant murmur of a stream, the soft exhale of breath settling into sleep. Here, time itself seems to slow, inviting every thought and movement to soften, to lengthen, to simply be. In homes, life continues in gentle, deliberate rhythms. Fires are coaxed to a steady warmth, casting soft light across walls and familiar objects. Bowls are stirred slowly, water poured with care, and cloth is mended stitch by stitch. Every gesture is purposeful yet unhurried, reinforcing the quiet pulse of existence. The new year, though long past, lingers subtly in these routines, a reminder of patience and mindful attention. In villages, the pace of labor mirrors the measured unfolding of days. Farmers tread carefully through fields, observing soil, plants, and animals with calm awareness. Fences are repaired slowly, tools are tended methodically, and seeds are readied for planting when the time comes. Animals move with steady, contented steps. Every motion, whether human or animal, flows naturally, forming a seamless rhythm of life. In towns, artisans return to their workspaces, hands moving in repeated, soothing patterns. Hammers strike wood with soft precision. Shuttles glide across looms, weaving threads together in quiet harmony. Quills scratch parchment steadily, words forming slowly, carefully. Apprentices watch and learn not only the craft, but the art of deliberate attention, the quiet discipline that allows both work and life to unfold gracefully. Kitchens fill with gentle warmth and comforting aromas. Bread rises slowly in ovens, stews bubble with subdued fragrance, and herbs lend subtle scent to the air. Meals are shared slowly and thoughtfully, conversation soft, laughter light and unintrusive. Even the smallest gestures, the careful pouring of tea, the folding of cloth, the tending of a fire, carry meaning within this unhurried rhythm. Outside, nature moves with the same steady grace. Days lengthen imperceptibly. Snow melts gradually, revealing soft earth beneath. Buds swell quietly on trees, and animals move with calm deliberation. The wind passes gently, brushing leaves and carrying the subtle hum of the world, as if time itself wishes to be observed slowly rather than rushed. In homes observing spiritual or cultural practices, quiet routines continue. Candles burn steadily, lamps glow with calm light, and prayers or chants rise softly, settling into the space without demand. Sacred texts are read slowly, words absorbed and allowed to linger. The new year here is less a celebration and more a quiet acknowledgement that life continues, patient and unwavering. Children carry forward the season's gentle rhythm. Games unfold with deliberate care. Their eyes notice textures, shadows, the play of light and movement. They learn patience, attentiveness, and the slow, quiet unfolding of life. Their laughter blends seamlessly with the steady calm around them. Evenings lengthen softly, stretching into peaceful, unhurried time. Families gather by fires or lamps, sharing warmth, conversation, and silence. Stories are told in measured, soothing tones. The hush of night becomes a companion, comforting and grounding. Sleep comes easily, encouraged by routine, warmth, and the gentle pulse of life. Across cultures, regions, and centuries, this pattern repeats. Villages, towns, mountains, plains, and rivers all experience the new year not as a dramatic or urgent moment, but as a soft, continuous unfolding. Days pass steadily, work continues, rest follows naturally, and life flows without interruption. And now, as this narration drifts forward, it carries the same calm, unbroken flow. There are no sudden turns, no peaks, no pressure to conclude. Only the slow, patient current of life itself, steady, enduring, and infinite. The new year, remembered softly across generations, has always been patient, always gentle, always steady. And here, embraced in this continuous stream of calm, you can release thought, relax fully, and drift deeper into rest, carried effortlessly by the steady, soothing rhythm of life itself. The night stretches on, vast and serene, enfolding everything in its gentle stillness. Every sound, the soft crackle of a fire, the distant rustle of leaves, the quiet breath of those sleeping, blends seamlessly into the slow rhythm of time. Here, there is no urgency, no pressure, only the gentle unfolding of life as it always has been. In the weeks following the new year, life in earlier centuries continues its soft, deliberate course. In homes, hands move thoughtfully through familiar tasks. Fires are tended, bowls are stirred, water is poured, and cloth is mended stitch by stitch. Each action is small, yet purposeful, a quiet affirmation of steadiness. The New Year's influence lingers subtly, not in celebrations or grand gestures, but in the care with which life is carried forward. In villages, the rhythm of work is calm and measured. Farmers walk slowly through fields, observing the soil, the state of crops, and the movements of animals. Fences are repaired carefully, tools maintained with attention, and seeds readied for planting when the season turns. Animals mirror this gentle pace, moving contentedly alongside their caretakers. Every step and gesture blends naturally into the ongoing rhythm of life. In towns, artisans continue their work at benches, looms, and workshops. The tapping of hammers, the hum of weaving, and the soft scratch of quills on parchment form a subtle, soothing symphony. Apprentices absorb not just skill but the quiet patience that guides it, learning that the value of work lies in steady attention rather than haste. In kitchens, aromas of simple meals fill the air. Bread rises in warm ovens. Stews simmer slowly, releasing gentle fragrances. Herbs are sprinkled thoughtfully, enhancing the calm atmosphere. Meals are shared with quiet conversation, laughter soft and unintrusive, and the warmth of togetherness becomes the true sustenance. Even the smallest gestures, the careful folding of cloth, the tending of a fire, the pouring of tea, carry significance within this unhurried rhythm. Outside, nature moves with a gentle, deliberate pace. Days lengthen slowly. Snow melts gradually, revealing softened earth beneath. Buds swell on trees and plants, promising growth yet to come. Animals move in measured steps. The wind passes lightly through leaves and grasses, carrying the subtle, calming sounds of the world. Time itself feels spacious, inviting observation, patience, and reflection. In households observing spiritual or cultural traditions, quiet routines continue. Candles burn steadily, lamps glow with consistent warmth, and prayers or chants rise softly, settling in the still air. Sacred texts are read slowly, words absorbed with care. The new year is not marked with fanfare, but woven seamlessly into daily life, reminding all who observe it that existence continues patiently, steadily, and with quiet purpose. Children adjust naturally to this slower rhythm. Games unfold gradually, filled with careful observation and gentle curiosity. They notice textures, light, shadows, and movement, absorbing lessons in patience, attentiveness, and the beauty of time unfolding. Their laughter is soft, blending effortlessly with the calm around them. Evenings are long and serene, stretching into hours of quiet reflection. Families gather near fires or lamps, sharing warmth, comfort, and gentle conversation. Stories are told in slow, soothing tones. The hush of night is embraced, offering reassurance and grounding. Sleep arrives naturally, guided by routine, warmth, and the comforting pulse of life. Across continents and centuries, this gentle rhythm repeats. Villages, towns, cities, mountains, plains, and rivers all experience the new year not as a dramatic interruption, but as a soft, continuous unfolding. Days pass steadily. Work continues. Rest follows naturally. Life flows without abrupt interruption, patient, reliable, and calm. And now, as this narration drifts forward, it carries that same unbroken, gentle flow. No sudden turns, no sharp peaks, no urgency. Only the steady current of time, slow, enduring, and infinite, carrying everything forward. The new year, remembered softly through countless generations, has always been patient, always gentle, always steady. And here, in the quiet embrace of this unbroken, flowing calm, you can release thought, let your body soften completely, and drift ever deeper into rest, carried effortlessly by the soft, enduring rhythm of life itself. The night deepens as our journey continues, and the rhythm of time grows softer, like a slow breath drawn in and gently released. The idea of the new year, wherever we travel, seems to settle not in grand declarations, but in the smallest, most human gestures. A bowl placed carefully on a table, a candle lit with steady hands, a door opened just a little wider to welcome what may come next. As the medieval world turned through its seasons, the passing of the year often felt less like a sudden shift and more like a gradual easing from one chapter into another. In quiet villages across Europe, people did not watch clocks strike midnight, for time was measured more by light and shadow, by bells and birdsong. The new year arrived not with fanfare, but with the subtle sense that the days would soon begin to lengthen, that the cold would, eventually, loosen its grip. In many medieval households, the final evening of the old year was spent close to the hearth. Wood crackled gently, releasing warmth and the faint scent of resin. Meals were simple but comforting. Thick soups, coarse bread, perhaps a bit of preserved fruit saved for this moment. The act of eating together was itself a quiet celebration, an affirmation of survival through another cycle of seasons. Hands passed bowls slowly, conversations unfolded in low voices, and children, growing drowsy, leaned against parents or siblings, listening to familiar stories retold for comfort. In monasteries, where time was observed with particular care, the turning of the year was marked with prayer and reflection. Monks rose before dawn, their footsteps echoing softly through stone corridors worn smooth by centuries of movement. Candles illuminated manuscripts and prayer books, their flames trembling gently in the cool air. The new year was not a call to revelry here, but an invitation to contemplation. Hours passed in measured calm, punctuated by chants that flowed like a river, steady, unhurried, endlessly soothing. Beyond Europe, in the vast lands shaped by the Islamic Golden Age, the new year was observed according to lunar calendars, its arrival shifting gently through the seasons. In cities like Baghdad or Cordoba, scholars and families alike might take the time to clean their homes, organize libraries, and prepare small feasts. The emphasis was often on renewal of the mind and spirit, reading poetry, reflecting on the passage of time, sharing wisdom passed down through generations. The air might carry the faint fragrance of incense, curling upward in delicate streams, while voices recited verses that spoke of patience, balance, and the quiet beauty of continuity. Travel eastward, and the new year takes on still more textures, each one soft and inviting. In ancient and medieval China, preparations unfolded slowly over many days. Homes were swept carefully, dust carried away as though it were a physical memory of the old year. Brushes dipped in ink moved across paper, writing characters that expressed hopes for peace, health, and harmony. These were hung thoughtfully, straightened again and again until they felt just right. Their presence meant to gently guide the days ahead. On New Year's Eve, families gathered around low tables, steam rising from dishes prepared with care. Dumplings, shaped like small crescents, symbolized fullness and abundance. Each one was folded patiently, the repetitive motion calming, almost meditative. The meal lingered for hours, conversation flowing easily, punctuated by moments of comfortable silence. When night fell, lanterns were lit, not to dazzle, but to glow softly, casting warm circles of light that swayed gently in the winter air. In Japan, the approach of the new year brought with it a sense of deliberate stillness. Homes were cleaned with special attention to detail, tatami mats brushed, and doorways wiped until they gleamed faintly in the low light. Decorative pine branches and straw ropes were placed with care, symbolizing endurance and welcome. As the year ended, people often gathered quietly, listening to temple bells ring out slowly, each toll marking the release of a past burden, a lingering worry, a moment ready to be set down. Food, here too, played a role in comfort rather than excitement. Simple dishes were arranged beautifully, each element chosen for its meaning and balance. The act of eating was slow, mindful, allowing the body to settle and the mind to wander gently. Children stayed awake as long as they could, their eyes growing heavy as the night deepened, eventually drifting to sleep wrapped in warmth and familiarity. Across the seas, in the ancient Americas, the new year was tied closely to the cycles of nature. The Maya and the Aztec peoples observed time through intricate calendars that aligned human life with celestial movements. When a cycle ended and another began, rituals focused on harmony rather than spectacle. Fires were tended carefully, ashes cleared, and new flames kindled with reverence. These moments were quiet acknowledgments of continuity, of the balance between earth, sky, and people. In Andean regions, the turning of the year often involved offerings to the land itself. Small tokens of gratitude, food, flowers, or crafted objects, were placed gently on the ground, a silent conversation with the earth that sustained them. Families gathered close, sharing warm drinks made from grains or herbs, the steam rising slowly into the cool mountain air. Stories were told softly, not to entertain, but to remember, to pass along the steady rhythm of life as it had always been lived. As centuries moved forward and societies changed, the new year remained a moment for pause. In Renaissance Europe, households might mark the occasion with music played softly on lutes or viols. The melodies were unhurried, filling rooms with a sense of calm reflection. People dressed in their best, not extravagantly, but with care, acknowledging the significance of the moment without overwhelming it. Letters were written, journals updated, accounts balanced, all acts of gentle closure before beginning anew. In rural areas, where life followed the land more closely, the new year was an extension of winter's stillness. Farmers checked their stores, mended tools by firelight, and spoke quietly of plans for planting when spring returned. The year ahead was imagined not in bold strokes, but in small, practical hopes. Good weather, healthy animals, steady harvests. These hopes were shared over mugs of warm drink, hands wrapped around the vessels for comfort. Even in places touched by empire and expansion, the new year found its way into the intimate corners of daily life. In Ottoman households, for example, the arrival of a new year might be marked by the preparation of special sweets, their delicate textures crafted with patience. Rose water and honey scented the air, and trays were arranged with careful symmetry. Family members exchanged blessings in soft voices, the words carrying more weight than any display. In West Africa, time was often understood through cycles of community and nature rather than strict calendars. The new year emerged through festivals tied to harvests or rains, marked by shared meals and storytelling. Drums might sound, but even their rhythms could be gentle, repetitive, grounding rather than rousing. Elders spoke of ancestors, children listened with wide, sleepy eyes, and the night unfolded slowly beneath a vast, quiet sky. As the world moved into the early modern period, the new year gradually became more standardized in some regions, aligning more closely with January 1st. Yet even then, for most people, it remained a modest affair. In small towns and villages, church bells might ring briefly, marking the passage of time, before falling silent again. People returned to their homes, carrying with them a sense of gentle acknowledgement rather than celebration. Candles continued to play a central role. Their flames were small and steady, a perfect symbol of continuity. Watching a candle burn was itself a kind of meditation, the flame bending slightly with each subtle movement of air, yet never rushing, never faltering. In this quiet glow, people reflected on losses and joys alike, allowing both to exist without urgency. Children, across cultures and centuries, experienced the new year in their own soft way. They might be given a small sweet, a coin, or a new piece of clothing. These gifts were modest, but they carried a sense of care and intention. Children sensed the importance of the moment not through explanation, but through atmosphere, the slower pace, the closeness of family, the warmth that seemed to settle into every corner of the home. As night edged toward morning, the new year often began not with action, but with rest. People slept, wrapped in layers against the cold, breathing evenly as the world quietly turned. The year changed whether anyone watched it or not, slipping into place like a new page waiting to be written. And so the story of New Year's celebrations in the past is not one of noise or spectacle, but of continuity and calm. It is a story told in gestures repeated across generations: cleaning, cooking, lighting, sharing, resting. Each action, though small, carried meaning, anchoring people to one another and to the steady passage of time. As we linger here, letting these images drift gently through the mind, there is no need to hold on to every detail. Let them pass like clouds across a quiet sky. The soft glow of lanterns, the low murmur of voices, the warmth of shared meals, all of it continues to echo, even now, as the world slows and the night invites rest. The new year arrives, as it always has, not with urgency, but with patience. And in that patience, there is comfort enough to carry us gently onward, into sleep, into dreams, into the quiet promise of what comes next. The gentle passage of time continues, unbroken and unhurried, as though the world itself has settled into a long, steady breath. The idea of a new year drifts onward through history, carrying with it the same quiet intentions, even as centuries slowly turn their pages. In many places, the earliest moments of the new year were marked by simple routines resumed. A fire rekindled at dawn, a pot set gently on the hearth, the sound of footsteps in snow or on packed earth as someone stepped outside to greet the morning. There was comfort in familiarity. The new year did not demand reinvention. It invited continuation, softened by reflection. In medieval towns, shopkeepers might open their shutters a little later than usual, letting pale winter light spill across wooden floors. The streets remained calm, echoing only with the distant call of birds or the low rumble of a cart rolling slowly by. Greetings exchanged between neighbors were warm but restrained, accompanied by nods or brief smiles. Words like peace, health, and good fortune were spoken softly, as though too much volume might disturb the fragile balance of beginnings. Across the countryside, bells rang again, not loudly, not urgently, but as a reminder that time was moving forward. Their sound traveled across fields and rooftops, settling gently into the air. People paused for a moment to listen, hands resting on tools or door frames, allowing the sound to wash over them before returning to their tasks. In this way, the new year wove itself quietly into daily life. In households with written calendars or almanacs, the turning of the year might be marked by careful notation. A new page was turned, its surface clean and unmarked. Ink was prepared, pens trimmed, and the first lines written with deliberate care. These records were not dramatic chronicles, but practical notes, weather observations, planting dates, household accounts, each one a small anchor in the flow of time. In Jewish communities, the new year, Rosh Hashanah, arrived in autumn, carrying with it a deeply reflective atmosphere. The sound of the shofar, a ram's horn, was not meant to startle but to awaken the spirit gently, calling people inward rather than outward. Families gathered for meals that emphasized sweetness and hope, apples dipped in honey, bread shaped in gentle rounds. Prayers were spoken slowly, thoughtfully, and the days that followed encouraged introspection, forgiveness, and quiet resolve. Elsewhere, in ancient Persia, the new year of Nowruz arrived with the spring equinox, when light and dark balanced perfectly. Homes were cleaned thoroughly, and tables were set with symbolic items representing life, growth, and renewal. The preparations were as meaningful as the day itself, each object placed with intention, each gesture reflecting harmony with nature. When the moment arrived, it was greeted with calm satisfaction, a sense that the world had aligned once more. As maritime exploration expanded the known world, new traditions traveled alongside ships and traders. Yet even as customs mingled, the underlying tone of New Year observances often remained subdued. Sailors marked the turning of the year far from home by sharing simple meals aboard quiet decks, gazing at stars reflected in dark water. Their celebrations were inward, filled with longing and hope, carried gently on the rhythm of waves. In early modern cities, where clocks began to regulate time more precisely, the new year became slightly more defined. Still, for most people, it was not a moment of sudden noise. Church services offered space for reflection, their hymns slow and steady. Candles illuminated stone walls, and voices blended into harmonies that felt grounding rather than stirring. When services ended, people stepped back into cold air, their breath visible, their minds calm. In homes lit by oil lamps, families might gather to share stories of past New Years, memories of winters. Harsher or milder, of births and losses, of seasons survived. These recollections were not heavy. They were woven into the fabric of life, acknowledged with acceptance. The telling itself was soothing, a reminder that change was constant, yet manageable. Even among royalty and nobility, New Year celebrations were often quieter than one might expect. Courtly rituals emphasized order and continuity. Gifts were exchanged formally, words carefully chosen. Attire was elegant but restrained. Behind palace walls, there were moments of stillness, private reflections, solitary walks through gardens bare of leaves, the soft crunch of frost underfoot. In rural cottages, where space was shared closely, the new year offered a rare chance to rest. Work slowed, even if only briefly. People slept longer, rose later, and allowed themselves the luxury of idleness. This pause was precious, a small pocket of calm within the demands of survival. Across Asia, in regions influenced by Buddhist traditions, the new year carried themes of impermanence and mindfulness. Monasteries welcomed visitors seeking blessings or guidance. Bells chimed softly, incense drifted upward, and meditation halls remained quiet sanctuaries. The focus was not on what lay ahead, but on presence, on being fully within the moment as it passed. As time moved closer to the modern era, printed calendars, newspapers, and clocks slowly changed how people perceived the new year. Yet, even with these changes, the deeper human response remained gentle. The new year was still a threshold crossed quietly, often in the company of loved ones, or in peaceful solitude. In small villages across the world, elders continued to mark the year with wisdom rather than excitement. They spoke of patience, of cycles repeating, of the importance of tending relationships as carefully as fields or homes. Their voices were calm, steady, and reassuring, offering continuity in a changing world. As the hours of the first day unfolded, life resumed its familiar patterns. Animals were fed, fires were stoked, doors were opened and closed. The extraordinary faded back into the ordinary, and that, too, was comforting. The new year did not disrupt, it settled gently into place. And now, as these images and customs drift together like overlapping dreams, there is no need to follow them closely. They can blur and soften, becoming impressions rather than details. A candle flame, a quiet bell, a shared meal, a clean page. The past reminds us that the new year has always been less about beginning anew and more about continuing gently, about carrying forward what matters, releasing what no longer does, and trusting the steady rhythm of time. As this long, unbroken story continues to flow, you can let your thoughts slow with it. There is nothing to anticipate, nothing to prepare for. Just the calm awareness of time moving softly onward, as it always has, as it always will. And in that calm, it becomes easier to rest, easier to let go, easier to drift, unhurried, into sleep, carried by the quiet echoes of countless new years, all whispered rather than shouted, all unfolding gently in the dark. The flow of time keeps moving, smooth and unbroken, like a wide river gliding through the night. The idea of the new year, so gently held by countless generations, continues to reveal itself not as a single moment, but as a feeling that lingers, settles, and slowly dissolves into everyday life. In many historical homes, the days following the new year were marked by careful observation. People watched the weather closely, believing the first days held quiet clues about the months ahead. A clear morning brought calm optimism. A soft snowfall was seen as a sign of rest and nourishment for the land. These observations were not anxious predictions, but thoughtful reflections, spoken softly over morning meals or shared during slow walks outside. In farming communities, tools were inspected and repaired during these early days of the year. Wooden handles were smoothed by hand, metal edges cleaned and sharpened with patient strokes. The repetitive sounds of this work were soothing, stone against steel, cloth against wood. It was a form of preparation that felt grounding, reminding people that the year ahead would be built from small, steady efforts rather than sudden change. Inside homes, the quiet order established before the new year was maintained with care. Floors remained swept, linens folded neatly, and shelves arranged thoughtfully. There was a sense of pride in this calm order, not for appearance, but for peace of mind. A tidy space made room for quiet thoughts, for rest, for the gentle rhythm of daily living. In many cultures, storytelling played an important role in carrying the new year forward. Elders shared tales from long ago, stories that had been told many times before. Their voices were low and even, shaped by repetition and familiarity. These stories did not rush toward conclusions. They wandered, lingered, and looped back on themselves, much like memory. Children listened not to be entertained, but to be soothed, their breathing slowing as the words washed over them. In parts of Eastern Europe, the new year blended seamlessly with long winter evenings. Families gathered near stoves or ovens, hands warmed by clay or iron surfaces that held heat for hours. Knitting needles clicked softly. Spindles turned slowly. These quiet crafts filled the space between conversation and silence, allowing thoughts to drift freely. In colder regions, the natural world itself seemed to join in the observance. Snow muffled sound, creating a cocoon of stillness. Even familiar landscapes appeared new, softened by white layers that erased sharp edges. People moved carefully, deliberately, their steps leaving brief marks that would soon fade. The new year, like these footprints, felt temporary yet meaningful. In warmer climates, where the new year arrived without winter's hush, celebrations were shaped by the gentle rhythms of evening air. Lamps glowed softly against clay walls. Courtyards echoed faintly with footsteps and quiet laughter. The scent of citrus, herbs, or warm earth lingered, blending with the steady presence of night insects or distant water. Across the centuries, letters written at the start of the year reveal how people felt during these moments. They wrote of gratitude for simple things: health, shelter, companionship. They expressed hope cautiously, without grand expectations. These letters were often folded carefully, sealed, and sent on slow journeys, their words traveling patiently across distances, carrying calm intentions from one place to another. In households where music was part of daily life, the new year brought gentle melodies rather than lively tunes. Instruments were played slowly, thoughtfully. Notes hung in the air, fading gradually. Music was not meant to energize, but to comfort, to mark the passage of time with sound that felt familiar and safe. Religious spaces, too, offered refuge during this period. Whether in churches, temples, mosques, or shrines, people entered quietly, often alone or in small groups. They sat, stood, or knelt in stillness, allowing the weight of the past year to settle before being gently released. The new year, in these spaces, was a moment of inward turning, a soft resetting of intention. As generations passed, children grew into adults who repeated these same customs, often without questioning them. The repetition itself became meaningful. Lighting a candle, sharing a meal, cleaning a room. These acts connected individuals to ancestors they would never meet, forming an unbroken chain of quiet continuity. In coastal towns, the new year carried the scent of salt and seaweed. Fishermen checked nets, mended sails, and watched the horizon with calm attention. The sea, constant and patient, reminded them that time moved on regardless of human calendars. The new year was simply another tide, another turning, to be respected rather than celebrated loudly. In mountainous regions, the year began with the sound of wind moving through stone and pine. Smoke rose straight up from chimneys in still air. People stayed close indoors, wrapped in wool and fur, listening to the subtle sounds of the world beyond their walls. The new year was felt more than seen, like a shift in temperature or light. Even as societies became more complex, the new year retained this underlying softness for most people. It was not an interruption, but a continuation, a moment to pause briefly, then step forward with measured calm. As this long story unfolds, there is no urgency to remember each custom or place. They are meant to blur gently together, like overlapping dreams. What remains is the feeling they share, a sense of patience, of quiet renewal, of trust in the slow unfolding of time. You may notice your thoughts growing lighter now, less attached to any single image. That is how these celebrations were meant to be experienced, not analyzed, not rushed, but allowed to pass through, leaving behind a sense of calm. The new year, in the past as now, arrives without force. It settles softly into the world, into homes and hearts, asking only for acknowledgement, not attention. And as this steady rhythm continues, you can let yourself rest within it. Let the echoes of old bells, warm hearths, and shared meals fade gently into the background. There is nothing left to do, nowhere to go, only the quiet comfort of drifting onward, carried by the same slow passage of time that has guided so many before you. The night has grown very quiet now, as though the world itself has settled into rest. The long journey through past New Years, through candlelight and snow, through soft prayers and shared meals, begins to slow, just as breathing slows before sleep. In those distant centuries, after the final words were spoken and the last embers dimmed in the hearth, people would eventually rise from their places and prepare for rest. Cloaks were folded. Dishes were stacked neatly, ready for morning. Candles were pinched out one by one, leaving behind thin threads of smoke that drifted lazily upward and disappeared into the dark rafters above. Families moved through their homes with familiar ease. Footsteps were quiet, careful not to wake those already asleep. Children were tucked into beds layered with wool and linen, their faces relaxed, their minds already drifting far from the day. Adults lingered a moment longer, standing near doorways or windows, gazing out into the night where the new year had quietly arrived without announcement. Outside, the world felt unchanged and yet subtly different. The same stars shone overhead. The same moon traced its steady path. But beneath it all was the calm understanding that time had moved forward, gently and without resistance. Another year had begun, just as countless others had before it. In villages and towns, in monasteries and cottages, the same scene repeated itself again and again. Fires settled into glowing coals. The soft creak of wood echoed as buildings adjusted to the cold. Somewhere in the distance, an animal shifted in its sleep. Everything found its place in the stillness. No one rushed toward the future. No one demanded answers from the days ahead. The new year did not ask for promises or resolutions. It simply existed, waiting patiently, like a quiet road stretching forward into the dark, visible only a few steps at a time. And so people slept, trusting that morning would come as it always had, that bread would be baked, fields tended, stories told, that joy and sorrow would arrive in their own time, and that both could be met calmly, one day at a time. Now, as these old moments fade softly into the background, you can let them go. You do not need to carry the weight of centuries or remember every custom and place. Let the images dissolve gently, like mist thinning at dawn. All that remains is the feeling they leave behind, a sense of quiet continuity, of time moving slowly and kindly forward. A reminder that beginnings do not have to be loud, and that endings can be soft. If your thoughts wander, let them drift. If your breathing slows, allow it. The new year has arrived, just as sleep does, gradually, peacefully, without effort. There is nothing more to listen for now. The night is calm. The story is complete. And you can rest, knowing that, like those who came long before, you are held safely in the gentle rhythm of time. Good night.